Although the current imperial son-in-law was weeping bitterly, showing no pretense or shrewdness, Jian Wushuang knew that such a person, capable of great patience and tenacity, was not even afraid of death. Once he calmed down, he would surely consider Jian Wushuang's identity, background, and purpose. Therefore, Jian Wushuang needed to prepare in advance and subtly convey that he was unfamiliar with the Tang dynasty and had come here to overcome certain barriers in his cultivation. He also exaggerated his cultivation level. Invincible in the golden core stage, he had come here to break through his cultivation and advance to the nascent soul stage. A cultivator at the golden core stage was already considered a significant figure, although not much in the grand scheme of the Eastern Tang dynasty, but to an imperial son-in-law, he was like an immortal. Moreover, Jian Wushuang presented himself as a master with a perfected golden core, coming here to break through to the nascent soul stage. Chen Yuan was slow to realize it at first, feeling the pain of Azi's death, and then focused on revenge. The two conversed more and more amicably under the peach blossom tree. You seem harmless on the outside, yet your methods are so ruthless. Even I didn't expect it. I initially thought capturing those beasts and executing them publicly would be the end of it. But listening to you, it seems you're planning to eradicate their entire clan. Jian Wushuang feigned surprise. Chen Yuan, however, felt that wasn't enough and coldly replied, "Those beasts deserve to die. I will ensure they experience utter despair while alive. I'll leverage all my connections to dismantle several noble families in the Shanhai County. I want them to disappear from this world as if they never existed." Seeing Chen Yuan consumed by hatred, Jian Wushuang felt like patting his shoulder and saying, "Young man, anger harms the body." Yet he didn't voice this, instead nodding in agreement. "Revenge, to me, is just about satisfaction. I originally planned to kill those scumbags directly. However, since you're Azi's beloved, I'll leave the revenge up to you. If you need any assistance, you can find me." Hearing this, Chen Yuan quickly persuaded, "Why don't you stay in the mansion, senior? The city guards are strict in their patrols, and my status makes it troublesome for us to meet." "Haha, just some minor city guards. Apart from their commander, who else could be my match?" Jian Wushuang stood with arrogance, but then changed his tone, saying, "I think this courtyard is nice. I'll stay here for now. Once Azi's matter is resolved, I'll focus on my cultivation." After mentioning this a few times, Chen Yuan remembered it in his heart. Although he didn't say it, he had already decided on how to repay him. Although he didn't express it, Jian Wushuang could easily see what he was thinking. This couldn't be hidden from him. "All right, you should go back now. Although I'm free in Tian City, you're different. You are the imperial son-in-law now." Jian Wushuang intentionally spoke in a teasing tone. Chen Yuan thought he was angry and complained, "I only have a nominal relationship with the princess. She mingles with her lovers all day, and we haven't even seen each other in days. Even if she discovers I'm not in my room at night, she wouldn't care." Jian Wushuang was naturally aware of this situation. With a mere thought, he could detect the hundreds of people within the princess's residence. Heh! With a flicker, he vanished from sight. Having witnessed such divine techniques before, Chen Yuan wasn't surprised. He tidied himself up, picked up a lantern, and walked out of the courtyard. As dawn broke, the red tide from the east swept in, pushing back the darkness. The heavy rain also ceased at this moment. In the morning, as all things lifted their heads, Tian City buzzed with life once again. It was as if nothing had happened the previous night. The city guards also withdrew one by one, but the city gates remained tightly guarded. Tian City had 4 main gates. The first was the palace gate, the second the royal gate, the third the official gate, and the fourth the city gate. Each level was more stringent than the last. This was all because of the commotion Jian Wushuang caused last night, which kept the Xianxia guards constantly on edge. Outside the Xianxia tower, Yang Xiao rubbed his eyes as he walked out. So tiring. Playing chess with the commander-in-chief is more exhausting than patrolling outside. Dragging his weary body, Yang Xiao led his horse toward the palace gates. At this moment, he happened to encounter the various officials leaving court. They merely exchanged glances, each with a darkened expression. Humph! This useless group of Xianxian guards still hasn't figured out the matter of the Jiang Kingdom's downfall. They are truly useless, only strong in their own territory. Isn't that right? If it weren't for the prince consort reporting it today, we wouldn't have known that the nobles of Jiang Kingdom had fled to the Shanghai County. Fortunately, it was just fleeing nobles. If it were an invading army, wouldn't it have delayed our military response? The officials spoke more severely, wishing they could execute Yang Xiao on the spot. In the past, Yang Xiao would have surely made sarcastic remarks, but now he found himself unable to speak. He could only ignore them, and once outside the palace gates, he spurred his horse and left. On the way, his anger grew. Have we retreated all the way to Taiyan City from monitoring the 4 directions? Yang Xiao couldn't help but lament. The once renowned Xianxian guards in the capital not only supervised all officials, but also had a strong grip on curfews and control over Taiyan City. They were well versed in everything happening in the eastern lands, with overseers even in the southern heaven realm and the northern glaciers. But now, the Jiang Kingdom of the southern heaven realm was destroyed, and they knew nothing, nor did they send anyone to investigate. They had no choice but to swallow their pride in the face of ridicule. The sects across the eastern lands were trampling over them, and they turned a blind eye, even as they watched His Majesty employ people from the demonic cult. It was disheartening. Why is His Majesty doing this? The commander's heart is fully devoted to you. The more Yang Xiao thought about it, the angrier he became, but he had nowhere to vent. However, the counterattack was about to begin. Last night, while playing chess with the commander-in-chief, he received a special mission: to investigate the external actions of the holy cult. This was a signal of an impending counterattack. Over the years, the demonic cult had run rampant, relying on the court to commit countless misdeeds, and now it was time for them to pay the price. Moreover, this matter was being orchestrated by the commander-in-chief behind the scenes, so even His Majesty couldn't protect them. Yang Xiao furrowed his brows and sneered coldly, heading straight out of Taiyan City. Once outside the city gates, he abandoned his horse and traveled on foot. A cultivator at the Golden Core stage could travel 1,000 miles in a day, let alone Yang Xiao, who was one of the best among them. By noon, he had reached Mongshan County, 1,000 miles away. This place was the first major county outside the capital, permanently garrisoned to guard against the great demons and barbarians of the northern region. Small-scale wars often broke out, and deaths were common occurrences. What a strong aura of death! As soon as Yang Xiao entered Mongshan County, he sensed a powerful aura of death. That aura of death was so strong that it moved him, something not seen even after years of continuous warfare. Moreover, it was mixed with a sense of resentment. The deeper he ventured into Mongshan County, the stronger Yang Xiao felt this sensation. Yang Xiao wandered, stopping and going for 2 days, circling Mongshan County, yet he hadn't seen a single person. Following the trace of death energy, he eventually entered Mongshan County City. It was dusk. Outside Mongshan City there was a bustling scene. Many vendors and peddlers hurried into the city. Numerous northern barbarians were also driving their beasts to carry goods into the city. Although there were frequent conflicts, trade continued uninterrupted. Sometimes, even when both sides fought fiercely, business went on as usual. The Tang dynasty sold military weapons, while the northern barbarians sold cattle, sheep, and iron ore. Both sides had a tacit understanding not to attack the caravans. Yang Xiao, as a 6-coin Immortal Slayer guard, found this unsurprising, especially since he had come for the demonic cult. The Qiang sect publicly declared as the Sacred Fire sect, but everyone knew it was a completely demonic cult. The headquarters of the Qiang sect was unknown, but several branches were set up in counties surrounding the Tang dynasty. That's why Yang Xiao entered the city. Initially, he planned to find some clues before entering the city, but he hadn't seen a single person. Those villages were desolate, as if uninhabited for a long time. This was a county close to the capital, once home to millions, now nearly deserted. Yang Xiao felt a sense of unease growing within him. The closer he got to the city gates, the more intense the death energy became. Hurry up and get inside. The gates will close after an incense stick's time, and you'll have to wait outside until tomorrow. The soldier guarding the gate kept urging. Yet the caravans remained indifferent, and even the lone travelers were the same, walking with heads down, ignoring the warnings as if they hadn't heard. Xianxia, being alert, immediately sensed something was wrong. Caravans feared bandits and demons outside at night, let alone the lone travelers. Under normal circumstances, if a gatekeeper yelled like this, people would rush inside. But here they were indifferent. Moreover, the yelling soldier seemed unaware that his words had no effect, standing aside with a silly grin. Xianxia frowned deeply, stopping in his tracks. He muttered a spell and traced his fingers over his eyes, causing a golden light to flash. Heaven's eye! Open! Buzz! His eyes turned golden, scanning everything before him. What? Despite being well-informed, Xianxia couldn't help but exclaim. Outside the city gates, there were no living beings. Everything he saw before was walking corpses. Each had a large hole in their chest, their faces already decayed, eyeballs hanging at the corners of their mouths, eyes dark and hollow. The gatekeeping soldiers were skeletons, clad only in armor. Could it be that the entire Mongshan County is like this? Xianxia felt a chill in his heart. If this were true, the entire Tang dynasty might not fare any better. This was the foremost county outside the capital. While Xianxia was in shock, a row of people in black robes appeared on the city wall. The leader wore a black robe with a hood, obscuring his features, but his chest bore the mark of fire. There was no need to ask. It was someone from the Qiang sect. You still found out. The man in the black robe sighed. However, Xianxia remained unfazed, raising his head to look at the black-robed figure, sneering. A simple illusion? Are you trying to fool a ghost? Yes, I'm fooling you, this ghost. As the voice fell, 9 black-robed figures on the city wall simultaneously made their move. Each one was at the late stage of the Golden Core realm. Every one of them had strength comparable to Xianxia. These were the 9 strongest individuals in Mang Mountain County and the only late-stage Golden Core experts of the Qiang sect in the county. The 9 of them joined forces, intending to kill Xianxia. But Xianxia was calm because he was fearless. He feared no one of the same level. Even against Master Fengjue of Baoguang Temple, he had the strength to fight, let alone these mere demonic cult members. Though they were at the late stage of the Golden Core realm, they all practiced side-door demonic arts, which were cultivation techniques that merely elevated their realm without being suitable for combat. Xianxia raised his long spear, drawing a full circle. His terrifying combat power forced 3 black-robed figures to retreat in shock. This Xianxia is indeed formidable, truly comparable to the strong of Jinwu Guard. Humph. Even so, he won't leave Mang Mountain County alive today. Kill! The 9 closed in again, each using different techniques, trying to trap and kill Xianxia on the spot. The battle outside the city startled the birds and beasts in the forest. A crow perched on a branch cawed a few times, its red eyes glinting as it watched the fight below, then flapped its wings and flew away. In Taiyan City, within the Xianxian Tower of the palace. On the top floor, the Grand Commander remained a silhouette with his back turned. The originally silent top floor was disturbed as a gentle breeze swirled, and a black mist condensed into a humanoid shape, its voice hoarse. Master, Xianxia is fighting with the Qiang sect people. He might perish. The Grand Commander standing by the window kept his hands within his cloak, merely giving a slight acknowledgement, as if he had anticipated this outcome. Should we save him? The shadow in the black mist asked cautiously. The Grand Commander slightly tilted his head and calmly said, Our Majesty dislikes being at a disadvantage. If we want to eliminate his Qiang sect, we must sacrifice some manpower so he feels balanced. I understand. The black mist slowly dissipated. In the palace outside the Yangxin Hall, Lord Han was not inside today. Instead, he stood guard outside. Because tonight, a distinguished guest had come to the hall. Even he had to stand humbly outside the door. Lord Han frowned, sensing someone approaching, and asked in a hoarse voice, "What brings you here personally?" Whoosh! An elderly man in a black robe suddenly appeared in front of the hall. His eyes were waxy white, his face ashen, expressionless, and his voice was like a puppet. "The matter in Mang Mountain County can't be contained." "What?" Lord Han, usually composed, widened his eyes, frowning. "Didn't your Qiang sect arrange 9 late-stage golden core cultivators? Can Yang Shao escape? Besides, there's still a—" Yang Shao concealed his strength. "His current power is no less than Fengjue's," the white-eyed old man finished, turning to look inside the hall, muttering, "Hurry and notify His Majesty. The Xianxia guard is not easy to fool." With that, the white-eyed old man turned and left. Lord Han watched him leave, gritting his teeth, but could only turn back into the hall. In the dimly lit hall, 2 figures sat opposite each other. "I'm aware of the situation. You must visit the Xianxia Tower personally. Ask that old guy what he wants. As long as I can shut his mouth, I'll give it." Lord Han withdrew upon hearing this. "Sigh!" The Tang Emperor, dressed in a Taoist robe, sighed, his face obscured in the shadows. The person sitting opposite him had a faint smile, saying, "What's wrong? Can't you control your own subordinates? Should I help you get rid of him? Humph, do you think this is child's play? Wanting someone dead and they're dead." The Tang Emperor's face shifted, his voice deep. "That old guy was a close minister of the late emperor, with forces spread across the entire Eastland. Even though I've clipped many of his wings over the years, I can't take him down. 3 years ago, I might have acted against him, but the lesson from 3 years ago I won't forget. It seems her death has indeed drastically changed your temperament." The figure on the opposite side slowly rose and walked to the window, where he paused before smiling faintly. "The current progress is still too slow. You need to hurry up, or even when the Great Luo descends, it won't meet your requirements. The branches of the Qiang sect are constantly converging, and soon they will be gathered. There will be a batch of celestial energy tonight. I must trouble the celestial master later." At this moment, Tang Huang actually bowed respectfully to that person, his expression filled with utmost reverence. At the Xianxia Tower, Chong Feng brought Han Gong to the top floor. After glancing at the Grand Commander, he wisely retreated. "The matter of Yang Shao is not my concern. I can't handle it, nor do I want to. If you have the ability, go outside the city and kill him yourself. I won't stop you." Han Gong's expression changed. He hadn't even stated his conditions, yet this domineering Grand Commander of the Xianxia Guards had already relented. For a moment, Han Gong was at a loss and uncertain. "Really? Have I ever lied?" The Grand Commander sneered. The two of them had nothing more to discuss. Having received the answer he wanted, Han Gong immediately vanished from the Xianxia Tower. His figure dashed towards the outskirts of the city. Intercept and kill Yang Shao. Yet, deep down, he couldn't understand why the Grand Commander would do such a thing. What benefit did it bring him? This opportunity, even if it didn't bring down the entire Qiang sect, at least a few eyesores could be eliminated. Yet, without any conditions, he had agreed directly. The more Han Gong thought about it, the more puzzled he became. But just as he passed through the 3rd city gate, he sensed a team of Qiang sect cultivators and immediately understood. Not good. At this moment, 9 teams of Qiang sect cultivators entered the imperial city in succession. But as soon as they stepped into the city, hundreds of presences appeared around them, all of whom were golden core stage cultivators. Additionally, 2 squads of Jinwu guards personally intervened. "Haha! I've been waiting for you." Chong Feng descended from the sky, squinting as he scanned the Qiang sect members and roared, "Capture them all! Anyone who dares resist, kill them on the spot." "Yes, sir." Hundreds of Golden Serpent guards and dozens of Jinwu guards immediately took action. By the time the belated Han Gong rushed back, it was already too late. This battle had alarmed many. It also left Han Gong astonished at the Grand Commander's tactics and his ability to conceal so many Xianxia guard presences. The person seated across from him smiled faintly. What now? Can't even control your own subordinates? Want me to eliminate him for you? Humph. Do you think this is a game? Killing whoever you want. Tang Huang's expression shifted, and he said in a deep voice, that old man was a close confidant of the former emperor, and his influence is entrenched across the entire eastern land. Even though I've clipped his wings over the years, I can't bring him down yet. If this were 3 years ago, I might have acted against him, but I can't forget the lesson I learned 3 years ago. The wind and rain tonight grew even stronger. Within the princess's mansion, however, there was a scene of song and dance. The hidden back garden where Jian Wushuang resided remained pitch black, but he was already quite satisfied. Being able to settle in Taiyan City and incidentally using Chan Yuan to resolve matters in the Eastern Land's cultivation world meant that obtaining treasures in the future would naturally follow. At this moment, he was playing with a black square object. A crystallized material. Could it be left from when that cultivation world shattered back then? Jian Wushuang wondered in his heart. This was something he had found on the body of a Xian guard. 2 days had passed since then, and those 2 Xian guards had been thrown onto the street by him. He originally thought that the princess's mansion would have been searched by now, but after waiting for 2 days, no one came. Just now, he sensed the turmoil outside again, indicating that Taiyan City was indeed unstable, so no one paid attention to him. Therefore, he turned his attention back to studying the crystallized material. The thought power he had burned last time had already recovered, so he was no longer afraid of being probed by any nascent soul experts, which was why he could act so fearlessly. The power within this crystallized material is indeed substantial, enough to bring me to the golden core perfection stage. However, just the power within the material alone can't help me reach the nascent soul stage. Jian Wushuang's heart stirred as he gripped the crystal in one hand, unabashedly devouring the violent power within. The power of the material world was indeed formidable. Just this small piece, weighing 2 to 3 jin, was enough to bring him to the golden core perfection stage. If he could obtain 100,000 jin, he would be invincible in the human realm. Moreover, this method of devouring was something only he could accomplish. Others simply couldn't do it, not even Xianxia. A small Xian guard actually possessed such a precious item, and it was merely used to conceal his aura? What a waste of a treasure! Jian Wushuang was quite satisfied as he held the now fully absorbed crystallized material. Where there's one, there might be 2. Perhaps others also had such crystallized materials on them. This was far more useful than any of those natural treasures. Brother Wushuang, you've really struck it rich this time, directly reaching the golden core perfection stage. When will you get me a piece to absorb as well? Xiangyang's eyes gleamed with greed as he stared at the absorbed crystallized material, his eyes almost popping out of his head. He had personally witnessed Jian Wushuang's aura surge significantly in the short time it took to burn a stick of incense, and he was immensely envious. Jian Wushuang casually tossed the crystal over and said indifferently, "You can't absorb it. This is a unique secret technique I created back then. Although my power is gone, I still remember the principles clearly. If I can get 2 more pieces like this, I can reach the nascent soul stage. By then, no one in the Tang dynasty will be able to stop me, and natural treasures will be yours to choose as you please." That's true. If you're invincible, that means I'm invincible too. Haha. I have to admit, I'm really looking forward to the day you regain all your strength, Xiangyang said with a face full of envy. He had seen how powerful Jian Wushuang was at his peak. Unfortunately, what he saw wasn't Jian Wushuang's true form. If Jian Wushuang's true form appeared, this world wouldn't be able to withstand it, and it would have been shattered by a single sword long ago. Jian Wushuang also smiled and, in the calmest tone, said the most domineering words, "When I regain my peak strength, I will make this world regret being created." The next day at dawn, outside the princess's mansion, a carriage had already been prepared. The consort attended court daily, and although he lived in the imperial city, it was still more than 10 miles away, so naturally, he needed to take a carriage. Chen Yuan walked out of the mansion, adjusted his clothes, and boarded the carriage. Sitting inside the luxurious carriage, He mentally rehearsed the matters he would report during the morning court session. In recent days, he had repeatedly impeached the Shanghai prefecture several times. Moreover, it had already yielded significant results. A court commissioner had been sent to receive the refugees from the Jiang kingdom. Everyone knew that those who crossed thousands of miles of the sea weren't mere refugees. It was essentially a luxurious fleet. Each of them carried gold and silver treasures. Anyone who went could gain benefits. The advantages that originally could only be taken by the local aristocratic families of Shanghai Prefecture had now been directly taken over by the court due to Chen Yuan's actions. This was only the first step, far from enough. But court affairs couldn't be rushed. They had to be tackled step by step. Outside the palace gates, dozens of court officials were slowly gathering, heading to court together. Chen Yuan, as the consort, held the rank of a third-grade censor, a prestigious position. Though it was a subordinate third grade in the outside world, it would make him a top official far surpassing the status of a local governor. Consort, you're quite early today. In recent days, the consort has been in the spotlight. Shanghai Prefecture is going to experience an earthquake this time. The group of officials made remarks, some teasing, some flattering. Because the prince consort knew how to conduct himself and how to be a good official, all the ministers in the court had high hopes for him. After all, the princess was the current emperor's own sister, his full-blooded sister. With such a status, Chen Yuan was seen as having the potential to become the chief minister. You all overpraise me, my lords. This is merely my duty, Chen Yuan responded modestly, though he concealed his true intentions. Today, he had a significant scheme to reveal. Just wait. If today's plan succeeds, it'll be like grabbing them by the throat. On the surface, the prince consort appeared harmless, but beneath that facade, murderous intent surged within him. As he entered the grand hall, the officials had already taken their seats. Even the ever-mysterious and unpredictable Grand Commander of the Immortal Slaying Tower had arrived early. His presence puzzled many. In the eyes of the court officials, this man was the guarantor of imperial power and a close confidant of the emperor. He rarely attended court sessions, usually reporting directly to the Tang emperor if there was any issue. For him to attend court so early today clearly indicated that something significant was happening. Why is he here? Chen Yuan silently cursed in his heart. When he looked at the Grand Commander, there was hatred in his eyes, but also fear. Many in the court harbored grudges against the Immortal Slaying Tower. The Immortal Slaying Tower was not only a formidable force within the cultivation world, but also had the authority to oversee the entire court. Even the prince consort feared them, not to mention the other officials. If the Immortal Slaying Tower targeted someone, that person would be in for a rough time, if not facing death itself. Lord Yan, is the Grand Commander here today because of the matters in Shanghai County? Among the civil officials, all were on edge. Lord Yan, who led them, raised an eyebrow and sneered. Why should we concern ourselves with a eunuch? As for Shanghai County, it's one of the most important coastal cities of the Tang Empire. If there were to be an investigation, it would be the task of the imperial inspectors, not the Immortal Slaying Guards. Yan Zhong, a central figure of power within the Tang Empire, head of the 6 ministries, and the chief minister of the imperial cabinet, he was second only to the emperor. Only he would not fear the Immortal Slaying Guards. After all, he too was a close confidant of the Tang emperor, perhaps even closer than the Grand Commander of the Immortal Slaying Tower. He had no worries about the guards trying to frame him. With the emperor's protection, he could act with impunity. Of course, he had to possess sufficient power, not only in his official capacity but also with the backing of his family. The Yan family hailed from Changshui County in Mongshan Prefecture. Their ancestors had followed Emperor Wuzong 600 years ago. Though originally military men, the family transformed into a prestigious civil service family thanks to Yan Zhong's father. In just a few decades, the Yan family became a renowned noble house in the Tang Empire. When Yan Zhong became the chief minister, the family reached its zenith. In the court, both civil and military officials looked to this chief minister for leadership. As for the emperor, he had been preoccupied with cultivation, leaving the heavy responsibility of the empire to Lord Yan. The imperial cabinet was established because of him, reflecting the Tang emperor's trust in him. Yan Zhong's father had served under 3 emperors, and Yan Zhong himself had served 2, even being entrusted with the care of the late emperor's son. Thus, the current emperor trusted him enough to hand over much of the power to the imperial cabinet. It reached the point where the emperor often skipped court sessions, leaving the chief minister to preside. However, recent days had seen the entire court shaken by a single document from the prince consort. The reason for the upheaval was interesting. The prince consort's main objective was revenge. Meanwhile, the court officials sought to tarnish the reputation of the Immortal slaying guards, as the details of the destruction of the Jiang kingdom were still unclear. Even the fishermen of Shanhai County knew more than the court officials. In this way, the officials had successfully outmaneuvered the Xianxia guards while also aiding the imperial son-in-law. Naturally, the two sides came together. Though the imperial son-in-law was merely a son-in-law, he was backed by the entire noble faction. Today, their collaboration would undoubtedly strip the Xianxia guards of their power. Now that the Grand Commander of the Xianxia guards had arrived, they assumed it was due to this matter. Once they achieved their objective, they would become ravenous wolves, ready to crush the Xianxia guards or replace them with their own people. This was the nature of court struggles. In an instant, they could tear the flesh from their opponents. A single misstep could lead to the confiscation of property and the execution of entire families. Such conflicts were akin to a dance of swords. In the entire court, there was only one observer, the emperor. As the bell rang, a middle-aged man dressed in a black dragon-patterned robe appeared above the grand hall. His expression was resolute, and an indescribable aura of nobility surrounded him, overshadowing the immortal energy emanating from the cultivators. He was the emperor of the Great Tang Restoration, Li Miao. Morning court session. With the eunuch's sharp voice, the morning court officially began. Today's topic was the imperial son-in-law's furious criticism of Shanghai Prefecture, with the aim of targeting the Xianxia Pavilion. Of course, the main topic wouldn't be brought up too quickly. There needed to be some prelude. It started with trivial matters, all of which were addressed by Elder Yan Zhong. Emperor Tang didn't even listen, keeping his eyes closed and frowning the entire time. This puzzled Yan Zhong, as this emperor had always been a calm and thoughtful person. Why was he frowning today? Officials were masters of reading expressions. Noticing the emperor's displeasure, Yan Zhong signaled for the imperial son-in-law to speak, introducing today's main topic. This matter had been discussed with the emperor the day before. The advantage of the inner cabinet was that they could report directly to the emperor in person. In fact, many issues had already been communicated to the emperor or the inner cabinet before they were brought up in the morning court. It wasn't a place where one could speak freely. Time was limited. Upon receiving Elder Yan's approval, the imperial son-in-law, Chen Yuan, stepped forward with a serious expression and solemnly said, "Your Majesty, Shanhai Prefecture has been massively accepting refugees from Jiang State, among whom are many influential figures from Jiang. These individuals not only brought gold and silver but also military equipment and armor. Such a significant matter has been concealed by Shanhai Prefecture for several months. Their intentions are undoubtedly malicious, harboring thoughts of rebellion." Rebellion? This word was highly sensitive in court, as it implicated not just an individual but an entire group, a matter that could result in the collective loss of heads. Upon hearing the imperial son-in-law's report, the Restoration Emperor immediately opened his eyes and looked directly at Chen Yuan, his brother-in-law. "Elder Yan, regarding the Jiang State issue, why have I never heard of it?" Emperor Tang turned his gaze to Yan Zhong. It seemed like a question about mismanagement, but in reality the target was the Grand Commander of the Xianxia Guards. However, it wasn't appropriate for him to confront the Grand Commander directly, and this was where Yan Zhong stepped in to relieve the burden. "Your Majesty." Yan Zhong cupped his hands and replied, "The Jiang State issue was brought to our attention a year ago through intelligence from the Xianxia Guards, and it has been under investigation ever since. The Xianxia Guards have always had the responsibility of monitoring the realm, regularly sending intelligence to the Ministry of War for analysis. However, this investigation abruptly stopped 6 months ago. As I am stationed in the capital and focused on my primary duties, I was powerless to continue. I humbly request your Majesty's punishment. With those words, Yan Zhong spoke flawlessly. He first praised the Xianxia guards, then clarified each party's role. One side monitored the realm while the other governed it. One glance, one move. Everyone performed their duties. When the Xianxia guard received intelligence, they did everything they were supposed to do and kept following up on matters related to the Jiang Kingdom. However, the reason they hadn't followed up now was that they no longer had any intelligence from the Xianxia guard. Yet, Yan Zhong took full responsibility and pleaded guilty to His Majesty. But any intelligent person could see that this was all due to the intelligence issue with the Xianxia guard and had nothing to do with the Grand Elder. Before the Tang Emperor could speak, the civil and military officials all began to persuade him. Your Majesty, the Grand Elder manages the cabinet and oversees the affairs of the world. This failure of supervision doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of the cabinet. Please, Your Majesty, be discerning. Your Majesty. A series of pleas followed, but no one directly blamed the Xianxia guard. They were all wise enough to know that even if His Majesty punished the Xianxia guard, he wouldn't completely dismantle them. At most, there would be some penalties to maintain balance between the sides. If they offended the Xianxia guard too severely, they'd surely face retaliation in the future, which wouldn't be pleasant. Grand Elder Yen had foreseen this long ago. For every person who feared them, there were those who did not, like those who had been wronged by the Xianxia guard. Among the officials, a frail, white-haired old man slowly stepped forward. His hands trembled as he bowed, and though he appeared to be in his twilight years, his voice thundered like a storm. Your servant, willing to die for his advice. The Xianxia guard has colluded with the remnants of the Jiang Kingdom and failed to report it, harboring sinister intentions. They are a blight on our Tang Empire. I beg your Majesty to abolish the Xianxia Tower. His words shocked the entire hall. Yan Zhong took a deep breath and solemnly said, Prince Yu. The other officials dared not utter a word. The weight of those words was too heavy. To die for advice. Such a statement could indeed lead to death, especially when it involved the Xianxia guard, with their Grand Commander present in the hall. Many secretly glanced at the Grand Commander of the Xianxia guard, wondering how this eunuch would retaliate. Outsiders believed that the Xianxia guard only knew how to kill, but they didn't realize that this Grand Commander had once wielded power to suppress the entire court. If it hadn't been for the Tang Emperor's efforts to maintain balance by leaning toward the cabinet, the officials in the hall wouldn't have dared to act so boldly. Uncle, why are you doing this? The Tang Emperor seemed a bit surprised. Not only was the Emperor taken aback, but so was the imperial son-in-law. He hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly. Having only recently become the imperial son-in-law, he lacked experience in court matters and couldn't discern the true intentions of these old foxes, especially the one seated on the dragon throne. Let them stir things up, the more chaotic, the better. This way, the Shanghai commandery will be turned upside down. The imperial son-in-law steeled his heart, deciding to watch how the situation unfolded. Prince Yu, the leader of the meritorious nobles, had pledged his life for his advice. The other nobles understood that this time they had to go all out. After some hesitation, they too began to advise, advocating for the abolition of the Xianxia Tower. At this moment, the Grand Elder Yan Zhong stood aside, helping no one. His role was to ignite the flames. The rest was no longer his concern. As for imperial son-in-law Chen Yuan, he was merely the one who had struck the match. For a moment, the court was filled with passionate debate. Emperor Guangfu furrowed his brows, remaining silent for a long while. His gaze occasionally drifted toward the Grand Commander, but internally he was delighted. The Xianxia Tower had been a thorn in his side. In the past, he had chosen to endure certain things, but after last night's incident, he could no longer tolerate it. If he continued to endure, it would only jeopardize his plans sooner or later. However, the Xianxia Tower had grown too large to control. Despite several attempts to curtail its influence, the highest authority in the tower remained the Grand Commander, a loyal minister who had once served the late emperor. Defeating it in one blow was impossible. Moreover, balance was necessary. Seeing that the situation had reached a critical point, Emperor Guangfu rubbed his temples, his voice weary. "Commander Wei, do you have anything to explain to me?" "A way out." Upon hearing these words, the officials below were all startled, realizing that the emperor intended to protect Xianxia Tower once again. The emperor had now provided Commander Wei with an escape route. All it would take was a few flattering words and an admission of guilt, perhaps forfeiting some salary for a year or so, and the matter would be resolved. All their efforts just now would have been in vain. The elderly King Yu almost fainted at the sight, having waited many years for this opportunity. Wei Zhouxian, King Yu ground his teeth in hatred. Years ago, in an attempt to secure his eldest son's path to becoming an immortal, King Yu had secretly divided spiritual minds within his fief. However, the Xianxia Guard had discovered his actions, killing his son on the spot and confiscating the entire mine. How could he not hate them? He didn't dare to hate the emperor, but he had no qualms about hating this eunuch, and his hatred was immense. "Your Majesty, our Eastern Tang Empire spans 1,000,000 miles of fertile land and governs countless millions of citizens. We cannot allow a eunuch to place the Tang Empire in jeopardy. Otherwise, I would be ashamed to face our ancestors." After speaking, King Yu kowtowed again. Emperor Guangfu's eyelids twitched as he listened, his frown deepening. This time the words struck a chord. With the court now silent, everyone waited for the emperor's response. "Sigh!" Emperor Guangfu let out a long sigh and slowly stood up. His gaze swept across the court as he spoke in a restrained but angry tone. "Minister Wei, this matter started with the Xianxia Guard. Do you have an explanation?" In the end, the focus shifted back to Wei Zhouxian, just as initially planned. Using today's events to offset yesterday's mistakes. Such was the emperor's strategy. Reaching this point as emperor left Emperor Guangfu feeling somewhat helpless. But for the sake of... In the court, Wei Zhouxian finally raised his head after hearing the emperor speak. He slowly turned around, surveying everyone before fixing his gaze on Emperor Guangfu. In a solemn tone, he said, "I have no explanation to offer, Your Majesty. However, I must report that the situation in Mongshan County has already affected the capital. The demonic cult has ravaged the eastern Tang region, leaving the southeastern 9 counties empty of people. This is the critical issue for the Tang Empire, far more serious than any border conflict." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire court was shocked. Empty of people? The southeastern 9 counties? The officials who had lived in the capital all their lives had no idea of the actual situation outside. All they had received were reports filtered through layers of approval. Now hearing Wei Zhouxian say that the southeastern 9 counties were so devastated that not a single living person could be found, how could they not be shocked? Senior Grand Secretary Yan Zhong was the first to stand up and angrily rebuke. "Absurd, utterly absurd. The southeastern 9 counties have a population of tens of millions. How could they be empty? Over the past few years, the Tang Empire has enjoyed favorable weather, with no wars, plagues, or famines. How could so many people have perished?" "Minister Yan." Wei Zhouxian's gaze turned cold as he responded, "I said it was due to the demonic cult's ravages." His words directly targeted Emperor Guangfu. Everyone in the court knew that in recent years, Emperor Guangfu had considered establishing the Qiang sect as the state religion. Yet, Qiang sect was nothing more than a demonic cult. 3 years ago, they had been allowed to participate in the court, but they should never have been accepted into the imperial hall. To the civil and military officials, the Qiang sect had behaved with restraint over the years, with no egregious actions. The idea of establishing it as a state religion seemed acceptable. But now, hearing that the Qiang sect had committed such atrocities, their confidence wavered. "It's impossible. Just a few days ago, I received a memorial from the southeastern 9 counties. That's from my disciple." The Minister of Revenue was filled with surprise. The Minister of Personnel also objected, saying, "Every year, hundreds of officials are dispatched to the southeastern 9 counties, and they return at the end of the year to submit memorials. If such a major incident had occurred, how could they have kept it a secret? For a moment, the entire court was full of doubts and objections. Wei Zhouxian, however, smiled calmly. With a flick of his fingers, he produced a spark, which instantly transformed into a human figure. Desire King! Everyone was shocked. A spark turned into the Desire King, looking exactly like him. Then, with a few more transformations, it evolved into several high-ranking officials in the court. Everyone watching was amazed. They're all fake. After saying this, Wei Zhouxian put away this small trick. Such illusions could deceive the civil and military officials, but not the Immortal Slayer Guard. Since the Qiang sect had started working for the Restoration Emperor, he had discovered this issue. It all began when a member of the Immortal Slayer Pavilion was killed, only to reappear later. Upon investigation, they learned that the later one was a puppet. Because of this, he questioned the Tang Emperor, who subtly told him, "To keep the land but lose the people is not losing the land, but to lose the land means losing the people." The meaning was clear. For the sake of the eternal prosperity of the Tang dynasty, the people would have to endure some hardship. As a eunuch, as a court official living off the emperor's provisions, it was his duty to relieve His Majesty's worries. This was the most natural thing in the world. But Wei Zhouxian couldn't accept it. "Your Majesty, please see clearly." Wei Zhouxian bowed deeply. Even if he lost his position today, he had to expose the truth about the southeastern 9 counties. Because both the witnesses and evidence were there. No one could overturn this case. For a moment, the court fell into a terrifying silence. Even the Desire King, who hated Wei Zhouxian to the bone, remained silent. His personal grievances paled in comparison to the foundation of the Tang dynasty. If the Tang dynasty no longer bore the surname Li, he would not have his current wealth and power. The Restoration Emperor furrowed his brows, taking several deep breaths, and in his heart, he cursed, "Wei Zhouxian, I've given you opportunities, many opportunities. Why must you oppose me? You, a mere eunuch, dare to teach me how to govern the world." His eyes were filled with endless fury. The roar within his heart was like a prehistoric beast howling, and black mist began to emanate from the center of his brows. "If I am not strong, how can the Tang dynasty prosper?" He consoled himself. The Restoration Emperor's expression gradually calmed down. After all, this was the morning court session, and he needed to summarize the day's issues and make decisions. On the surface, everything had to look proper and beautiful, while in private nothing could go wrong. "I am deeply grieved." The Restoration Emperor, Li Miao, clutched his chest, his gaze complex, his tone heavy as he said, "The events of 3 years ago are still vivid in my memory. Where were all of you back then? If not for the Qiang sect's assistance, how could I have restored the Tang dynasty?" These words indeed struck a nerve, especially for the civil and military officials. They truly felt useless. In the past, there were 2 great contributors. One was the Immortal Slayer Guard, and the other was the Qiang sect. Now, being scolded was something they couldn't avoid. Of course, I must also thank Minister Wei and all the immortals within the Immortal Slayer Guard. Without them, I would never have made it out of Taiyan City. However, gratitude is one thing, but mistakes are still mistakes. The Emperor of Restoration's tone shifted as he continued. The Immortal Slayer Guard failed in overseeing the Shanghai prefecture. As a result, the destruction of the Jiang Kingdom went unnoticed, with no intelligence reaching the cabinet. I have decided to remove Wei Zhouxian from his position as the Grand Commander, and let the Nanshan Protector take over. Minister Wei, you will temporarily oversee the southern city defenses. Wei Zhouxian, who was present in the court, wasn't surprised. This was the price he paid for tearing through the heavens today. He had long said that this emperor never made a losing deal. As for the matter of the 9 southeastern prefectures, let the Ministry of Justice and the Dali Temple investigate together. As for the personnel selection for the inspection, let Chen Yuan lead the Immortal Slayer Guard to the 9 prefectures and uncover everything. What seemed like a major matter was actually handled with a light touch. Who didn't know that Chen Yuan was the Emperor Tang's brother-in-law, one of his own people? What could possibly be discovered in the 9 prefectures? The light in Wei Juxian's eyes completely dimmed. Even Yan Zhong of the cabinet couldn't help but frown. He was deeply dissatisfied with this, not because of the significant events in the 9 prefectures, but because the emperor was overly partial to the Qiang sect. A demonic sect from the cultivation world, if not for its merit in following the dragon, would never have been allowed into the court. Yet now it was being protected by the emperor so openly. How could this not dishearten people? Dismissed! But with the court dismissed, what more could they say? Wei Jiuxian closed his eyes slightly, took a deep breath, and walked out of the grand hall alone, his figure full of desolation. The hatred that had once burned so fiercely in his heart could no longer be summoned at this moment. This was the sentiment buried deep in the hearts of the court officials. Chen Yuan, however, clenched his teeth in hatred. He hated Wei Juxian. If it weren't for the massive issue Wei had exposed, today's appointment would have made him the governor of Shanghai Prefecture. Now, he had to inspect the Mongshan Prefecture of the 9 southeastern prefectures. His heart seethed with resentment. The court session dispersed. The Emperor of Restoration returned to the Hall of Mental Cultivation, but his heart was far from calm. Damn it! Damn it! Wei Jiuxian! The Emperor of Restoration could no longer maintain his composure, and his eyes were filled with dark mist. Ever since he became a nascent soul-stage cultivator, no one in the Tang dynasty had dared to defy him. Yet last night, Wei Jiuxian had the audacity to withhold the immortal fate that he had ordered the Qiang sect to collect. How could he not be filled with hatred? That immortal fate had taken the Qiang sect an entire year to gather. Once he refined it, he would be able to rapidly advance to the late nascent soul stage. Immortal fate was a precious thing. The reason he had broken through from an ordinary golden core cultivator to nascent soul was precisely because of the immortal fate refined by the Qiang sect. In just a few months, he had advanced to nascent soul and swept through the different kings. 3 years had passed, and no outsider could have imagined that he was already in the mid-nascent soul stage. At such a speed, there were few in the entire cultivation world who could match him. If it weren't for Wei Jiuxian ruining his plans, he would now be ready to break through to the peak of the nascent soul stage. The Emperor of Restoration, Li Miao, grew angrier the more he thought about it, gnashing his teeth. His hands gripped the desk, causing it to crack and creak. At this moment, a mist drifted into the hall, transforming into a figure in white robes. Already losing your composure? The person who came spoke calmly, not at all concerned that the mighty emperor was in a rage. Li Miao's response surprised people even more. He actually replied with respect, "I lost my focus and disappointed the immortal master. It's just a year's worth of immortal fate. If you let it go, you can have the Qiang sect collect immortal fate from the 36 northern provinces. I've already shielded that area from heavenly sight. As long as you have enough manpower, within half a year, you can gather enough immortal fate to reach the peak of nascent soul." The white-robed immortal master spoke with a calm tone. However, the Emperor of Restoration hesitated, his expression revealing his inner conflict. He said, "The matter of the 9 southeastern prefectures has already been exposed, and those 36 provinces." "What? Have you grown soft?" The immortal master showed no concern, floating closer and patting Li Miao's shoulder, reassuring him. "To accomplish great things, one must be ruthless. What you hold in your hands is the greatest opportunity in the entire cultivation world. Once you succeed, the entire cultivation world will remember your name, not just this small Tang dynasty. Name. The emperors of past generations all vied for fame. Take Emperor Wuzong, for example. When he reclaimed the 36 northern provinces, his name was etched into history, becoming a source of pride for his lineage. Li Miao not only wanted his name to be recorded in history, but he also wanted to leave a mark in the cultivation world, earning the reverence of billions. All right, let's do as the immortal master says. After only a moment of hesitation, Li Miao made his decision. As he watched the mist surrounding the immortal master dissipate, he comforted himself in his heart, thinking, "Once I achieve great success, The entire cultivation world will belong to the Tang dynasty. By then, they should be grateful to me. Grateful for the prosperous era I will have created for their descendants. But he never considered, would those people even have descendants left? In the imperial palace at the Xianxia Tower, Wei Jiuxian walked alone to the gate, only to be stopped by guards. Wei Protector, Lord Nanshan has instructed you to go directly to the southern city wall. There's no need to come to the Xianxia Tower anymore. The two guards at the gate were new faces. Wei Jiuxian, his body hunched, didn't argue. He turned to leave, but before he did, he paused and, without turning his head, said calmly, "Tell Nanshan not to damage my chessboard." After that, he left directly. In the southern city, at the division of the Xianxia Guards. "Commander, are you just going to let that scoundrel Nanshan do whatever he pleases? He's actually sending me to Shanghai County to oversee the refugees from the Jiang Kingdom. If I leave, Taiyan City will truly be under his control." Chong Feng's face was full of frustration. As the second-in-command of the Xianxia Tower, he had always only followed Wei Jiuxian's orders. Now that Nanshan was in charge, it was hard for him to accept. Moreover, sending him to Shanghai County was clearly a move to sideline Wei Jiuxian. Wei Jiuxian, with a calm demeanor, poured a cup of tea and pushed it towards Chong Feng, saying nonchalantly, "Then you should go to Shanghai County." But Chong Feng hesitated. But when he saw Wei Jiuxian's relaxed expression, he seemed to understand something. Lowering his voice, he said, "Commander, my arrangements are not to be questioned. Even if you guess the plan, do not speak of it. Just do as instructed." Wei Jiuxian handed a brocade pouch to Chong Feng. After receiving the pouch, Chong Feng nodded heavily. He had always trusted the commander's strategies. After finishing his tea, he accepted the order and left. It was only after returning to his residence that he opened the brocade pouch. Inside was just a short line of words, but after reading them, he was left utterly puzzled. "Chan Yuan." He casually crumpled the paper, closing his eyes in contemplation. Many things had happened in the court today, creating an air of uncertainty that even permeated the city. That night, at the Xianxia Tower, the powerful members of the Qiang sect, who had been captured by Wei Jiuxian, were released. Though they no longer possessed the immortal fortunes they had brought with them, there was no need to ask. Wei Jiuxian had taken those. "Tonight, the northern gate will be left open for you. Follow this route to leave the city. Once you're outside, someone will guide you." Nanshan, sitting on a rattan chair, waved his hand dismissively. "Go now." At the princess's mansion. Tonight, the halls were filled with esteemed guests, the atmosphere bright and vibrant. Chun Yuan was about to be appointed as the inspector, heading to the 9 southeastern counties. This was an imperial envoy, essentially a promotion. Upon his return, he would likely be elevated at least 2 ranks. Moreover, heading to Mongshan County, Chun Yuan would hold substantial regional power as a high-ranking official. Naturally, many came to offer their congratulations and bid him farewell. Tonight, Chen Yuan truly experienced the glory of being surrounded by esteemed guests. Some were friends, while others were colleagues or superiors. For example, some of the officials from the 6 ministries held positions higher than his, which showed how much face they were giving him. The banquet lasted until late at night. Chun Yuan, slightly tipsy, saw the guests off one by one at the door. Of course, he did not involve the princess in this task. After all, she was of noble birth. Moreover, the relationship between Chen Yuan and the princess was more like a partnership. They didn't interfere with each other's affairs, and each took care of themselves. After the guests were gone, Chen Yuan let out a long breath, the smile on his face fading away as he walked alone towards his study. He usually stayed in the east courtyard, while the princess resided in the west courtyard. They each had their own separate areas of activity. In the west courtyard, there were many small courtyards where male companions were kept, as well as some pavilions for entertainment, making it a lively place. The east courtyard was much simpler, with only a small bamboo grove and a few scattered courtyards. Within the bamboo grove stood a pavilion, which was Chun Yuan's study. This place was his sanctuary, and he had ordered the servants not to enter. Familiar with the path, he pushed open the door, but his brows furrowed. Someone was sitting in the main seat of his study. The figure was shrouded in darkness, making it difficult to see their face. However, Chun Yuan recognized the person at a glance. Either they were too familiar or this person had left a deep impression on him. "What are you doing here?" Chun Yuan's tone was laced with impatience. Seeing this person made his heart feel uneasy. The shadowed figure scoffed, mocking him. "Now that you've become a prince consort, have you forgotten your old brother? Humph, don't pretend to be close to me. We settled our scores long ago. If there's nothing important, get lost. TSK, TSK. How heartless." The figure in the shadows shook their head, then cut straight to the point. "I'm here on orders. There's something I need your help with." Upon hearing that they were on orders, Chun Yuan's frown deepened. He turned to close the door and lowered his voice. "Is it about the Mongshan County affair?" "Yes." The shadowy figure nodded before continuing. "The selection for the journey to Mongshan County has been made. You will be accompanied by a team of Imperial Guards and a squad of Immortal slaying guards. What you need to do is..." After finishing the instructions, the shadowy figure revealed a sinister smile. "Brother Chun Yuan, if you handle this well, your future path will be much smoother." As the voice faded, the shadowy figure also disappeared. Chun Yuan was left alone in the pavilion. It took him a while to recover, but before he could sit down, another shadow entered the pavilion. "The princess's residence is quite lively today." The newcomer was masked and sat in the same spot where the shadowy figure had just been, startling Chun Yuan. "Who are you to dare trespass in the princess's residence?" Chun Yuan immediately shouted in anger. The masked person playfully responded, "What can a little princess's residence do to me? If I can come in, I can kill you. Do you understand?" This was a blatant threat. Chun Yuan hesitated for a moment, then his breath immediately calmed down. "I knew this time wouldn't be peaceful." Feeling helpless, Chun Yuan smiled bitterly and said, "All right, tell me, which great deity are you, and what instructions do you have?" "Straightforward." The masked person clapped their hands and said bluntly, "First, ensure Yang Zhao's life is protected. Second, once you reach Mongshan County, do not interfere with Yang Zhao's actions." "Was it Wei Zhouxian who sent you?" Chun Yuan immediately guessed the origin of the visitor, then sneered, "Your information is really fast. I just found out that Yang Zhao would be joining the team, and here you are right after." Now that he had guessed the identity of the visitor, Chun Yuan was no longer afraid. After all, he was now a government inspector and didn't believe Wei Zhouxian would dare kill him. Unfortunately, he had guessed right earlier but made the wrong gamble later. Wei Zhouxian truly dared to kill him, and there would be no consequences to worry about. Heading to Mang Mountain for inspection was already unfavorable for the Tang Emperor. If he were to die before even going for the inspection, the focus would shift, and they would start investigating the death of the prince consort. This matter, like the death of imperial concubine Yi back then, would become an unsolved mystery. But because of the death of the concubine, the world's attention shifted from why the different king rebelled to the death of the concubine. It was a simple matter, and Wei Zhouxian would certainly know that. If he really sent someone to kill Chun Yuan, then he would have fallen into the trap. The Tang Emperor would likely reinstate his official position and have him investigate the death of the prince consort. In other words, killing the prince consort would be like turning back. If that were the case, why would Wei Zhouxian need to cause such a ruckus? So, even if he could kill, he wouldn't. This was an open strategy. I cannot avoid answering this question. I'll ask you just one thing. Will you help or not? The man in black spoke calmly, without any anger. Chun Yuan, however, remained fearless and sneered. Then is this a public matter or a private one? Ha ha. Breaking into the princess's residence in the middle of the night. What do you think? Public or private? So, it's a private matter, right? Chun Yuan shrugged. The man in black nodded. Correct. Humph. Chun Yuan snorted coldly, defiantly saying, Go back and tell Wei Zhouxian that I... Chun Yuan? have no private matters to discuss with him. If it's public, he can go to the cabinet and find Elder Yen. If the elder has any instructions, I will naturally not refuse. At that moment, Chun Yuan seemed like a mighty lord of the skies. But the man in black looked at him as if he were a fool. You really aren't afraid of death, huh? The man in black shook his head and suddenly drew a dagger, swiftly thrusting it forward. Yet, just as the dagger was about to reach Chun Yuan's neck, it stopped abruptly. Chen Yuan, realizing it too late, broke into a cold sweat from fear. He immediately shouted, "Senior, save me." The man in black was slightly surprised. He was only trying to scare this prince consort, so why did the other party call for help? Moreover, to dare to call for help in front of him, the other party must be highly skilled, capable of stopping him at such a close distance. Sure enough, in the next moment, the dagger in the black-clad man's hand flew out, shooting straight through the window and stopping only after severing the roots of a bamboo tree outside. A figure in a green robe slowly descended from outside the window and stood on the windowsill. The figure spoke. He had no intent to kill, just wanted to scare you. But his heart deserves punishment. Do you want me to finish him off for you? Finish me off? The black-clad figure sneered. Don't you think you're speaking a bit too boldly? You can try. The figure in the green robe smiled indifferently, not taking the other person seriously at all. Just a mere golden core perfectionist. Even if that Grandmaster Feng Ju, who was invincible in the golden core stage, came, he could cut him down with a wave of his hand. The figure in the green robe was none other than Jian Wushuang, who had been hiding in the princess's residence. Since absorbing the spatial crystal, he had reached the pinnacle of the golden core stage. In fact, he had long been ready to break through to the next realm, but he still lacked the necessary treasure for the breakthrough. He only needed one more of those spatial crystals to successfully advance. Unfortunately, he had no idea where to find another one. Moreover, after his breakthrough, his thought power had greatly increased, allowing him to sense several powerful presences in Tian City that could pose a threat to him. Thus, he chose to keep a low profile and remained hidden in the princess's residence, waiting for the right opportunity to act. Just last night, he had sensed a great battle taking place. However, he couldn't seize the opportunity amidst the chaos, as a powerful expert at the nascent soul stage had been present. If he had known that taking a risk last night might have given him the chance to break through to the nascent soul stage, he might have ventured out to try. But with Jian Wushuang's keen insight, he knew that the events of last night would undoubtedly stir up a storm in Tian City. Coupled with the grand banquet the princess's consort was hosting tonight, he had already gathered a rough understanding of the situation. That evening, he used his thought power to cover the bamboo forest, and sure enough, he discovered someone arriving. He quietly listened outside. As a result, he heard Chun Yuan's cry for help and realized he could no longer stay hidden. So he revealed himself. Moreover, he could guess that the other party belonged to the Xianxia Guard, and they must have discovered that a formidable expert was hiding within the princess's residence. Otherwise, the earlier disappearance of those two Xianxia guards would surely have been investigated. However, with the Xianxia Guard now facing its own troubles, they had no time to deal with such minor matters. Did you kill Zhang Zhou and Zhang Qi? The man in black asked, breaking the tense silence as he stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang saw no need to conceal the truth and calmly admitted it. As expected, the princess's residence was indeed hiding a master. But who exactly is he? Could he be from the demonic sect? The man in black speculated inwardly, yet he dared not make a move. After all, anyone capable of killing two golden snake guards under their noses was no ordinary person. The terrifying power that had just controlled his dagger further confirmed that the opponent was far beyond the golden core stage, though he didn't exude the usual violent aura of a nascent soul cultivator. Either the other party had achieved mastery in controlling their power, or he was not a nascent soul cultivator. The man in black was inclined to believe the former. With such strength, you must be no ordinary figure. Why are you hiding in this small princess's residence? He probed further. Jian Wushuang responded with a hint of menace. Some things are better left unknown. It won't do you any good to pry. The man in black, having been rebuffed, dared not press further. He decided to be straightforward instead, saying, "In that case, I won't ask. But there is one matter I cannot let go. It concerns the lives of billions of people in the Great Tang. To you, billions of lives may have nothing to do with your cultivation. But please, do not interfere in this matter." Interfere? Jian Wushuang had never intended to interfere. He was only interested in obtaining more treasures to enhance his strength. As for the common people, the fate of the world, they no longer concerned him. To him, mortal lives, with their mere century-long lifespans, were too short. Even if billions of people perished 100 years later, billions more would be born. This was why the human race spread across the entire starry sky. Unlike those powerful races or special beings, who found it difficult or even impossible to reproduce, relying on the universe or even time and space to nurture them. "This has nothing to do with me?" Jian Wushuang said, shaking his head, his expression still cold. Seeing this, the man in black frowned slightly. It was as he expected. Those with extraordinary power no longer cared about the lives of ordinary people. Just as he was considering how to extricate himself from the situation, Jian Wushuang suddenly changed the subject and said, "However, I can help you with your previous request regarding Chen Yuan, but not through Chen Yuan." He didn't want Chen Yuan to risk helping the Xianxia guard, so he intended to assist Xianxia himself. Xianxia. He had once been to the kingdom of Jiang and might know about Xianxiang's mother. Helping him while inquiring about the past events in Jiang Kingdom was a simple matter for Jian Wushuang. This was an exchange. There was no need to inform the man in black or Chen Yuan about it. Is Senior really serious about this? The man in black was a bit stunned. Just moments ago, it seemed like there was no room for negotiation. Why had things suddenly changed? Jian Wushuang's tone was unfathomable as he said, "Indeed, and I will ensure he returns safely to the capital." Then, the man in black wanted to ask why but swallowed his words, recalling what Jian Wushuang had said earlier. Although the truth couldn't be spoken, Jian Wushuang could easily come up with a plausible excuse. "Go back and tell Wei Zhouxian that when he sends people to the Shanghai County, I want them to kill a few individuals for me, at the southern city tower." Wei Zhouxian sat by the chessboard, holding a piece in his hand, not placing it down for a long time. "He wants me to help him kill a few noble families?" "Yes," Chong Feng respectfully replied. "According to number 1, these people are connected to Chen Yuan, and this time Chen Yuan went to Shanghai County because of them. Who would have thought, because of these nobles? I lost so much." Wei Zhouxian stood up, gripping the chess piece with a sinister tone. "It's time to clear out some small fry." Playing with the chess piece in his hand, Wei Zhouxian looked out beyond the city, replaying the events of the past few days in his mind. The tavern, the demon sect, and the suspected transformation into a baby. These events had all occurred within a matter of days. When he connected the dots, 2 words surfaced in his mind. Jiang Kingdom. And since it was related to Shanghai County, it must have come from Jiang Kingdom. "Chongfeng, do you remember the time when His Majesty ascended the throne and sent people to the Jiang Kingdom?" "I remember, sir." Caused quite a stir back then. They were searching for a female cultivator. But when they couldn't find her, the matter was left unresolved. Chongfeng answered truthfully. Wei Zhouxian nodded. Among those sent to Jiang Kingdom, the leader seemed to be Xianxia. "That's right." Chongfeng's eyes immediately lit up. Now everything seemed to make sense. Back then, the Guangfu Emperor had been concerned about a female cultivator who went to Jiang Kingdom and later sent the Xianxia guard to search for her. When this female cultivator disappeared, the Guangfu Emperor had been troubled by it for a long time, but later he suddenly let it go. Consort E. It was her appearance that made the current emperor forget about that female cultivator. And the fight in the tavern was between a mysterious expert and a demon cultivator from the Qiang sect. If it had been something above board, the Guangfu Emperor wouldn't have needed the Qiang sect to take action. He could have just sent the Xianxia guard. But the Guangfu Emperor didn't do that. Instead, he sent a team of cultivators from the Qiang sect to deal with the mysterious cultivator. There must be some unspeakable secret behind this. This matter was likely only known to the Guangfu emperor. Even Jian Wushuang, who was involved, was unaware. Thinking this, Wei Juxian's gaze deepened. He had always felt that a shadow loomed over the Tang Empire these past years. He couldn't shake off the feeling no matter how hard he tried. Wasn't there information that the mysterious cultivator went to investigate at the first floor? Bring me the file. I want to review it again. Wei Juxian decided to conduct a thorough investigation from the beginning. Perhaps he could uncover some clues, exposing the plot of the Light Restoration Emperor. At the princess's residence, in the bamboo pavilion. Thank you, senior, for your assistance just now. Chen Yuan bowed slightly, but when he looked up, his eyes were red, and his voice was hoarse as he said, Senior, it's my fault. I've been planning for so many days, yet I couldn't personally exact revenge. In the end, I still needed your help. Chen Yuan was deeply convinced by Jian Wushuang's pretext. From his perspective, Jian Wushuang seemed to be a reclusive expert who always kept his word. To help an ordinary person seek revenge, he even collaborated with Xianxia Tower, risking a great deal. This was something I intended to do from the beginning. You don't need to worry about it. Jian Wushuang patted him on the shoulder and continued. We depart tomorrow. I will conceal myself within the Xianxia guards, but I will arrange for 2 friends to protect you openly. As for Yang Xiao, you must keep it a secret. Chen Yuan immediately knelt on one knee, speaking with a serious tone. Please rest assured, senior. I will take this secret to my grave. Even if someone cuts open my belly, I won't reveal a single word. Live well. After Jian Wushuang finished speaking, his figure disappeared from where he stood. The next morning, outside the princess's residence, a group of people and horses had already assembled. With the princess seeing him off, Chen Yuan boarded the carriage, waving goodbye to her. On the surface, both of them kept up appearances, ensuring there was no awkwardness. Once Chen Yuan pulled down the carriage curtain, his expression turned cold. This time, he was heading to Mongshan County with a mission. Aside from Yang Zhao's matter, he had other tasks to complete. That task was to stall. When he reached Mongshan County, the truth wouldn't matter. What was important was how to smooth over the situation. While he might not have been able to discern the nuances of yesterday's battle, someone had pointed out to him that the more thoroughly this matter was investigated, the worse it would be for His Majesty. And Yang Xiao was precisely the one investigating this matter. But Chen Yuan had no intention of dealing with Yang Xiao. He had already thought of an excuse. What could an ordinary person like him do? After all, Yang Xiao was a powerful cultivator at the peak of the Golden Core stage. This time, though there were many experts accompanying the team, none of them could take down Yang Xiao without being noticed. On the surface, the 100 Imperial Guards were all battle-hardened elite cavalry, led by Captain Dong Biao, a powerful innate stage cultivator. Individually, they might not be much, but their combined strength was formidable. The 100 elite troops he commanded could surround and kill a Golden Core cultivator. In addition to them, there was also a squad of Xianxia guards. 2 of them were Jinwu guards, both late-stage Golden Core cultivators. And this didn't even include Yang Xiao. Besides the Jinwu guards, there were 10 Jinshi guards. With the strength they showed openly, it would be easy to sweep through some minor sections. Secretly, there was also a 7-Chen Zhanshin guard. He had been assigned to eliminate Yang Xiao. Chen Yuan couldn't command him since he wasn't on the official escort list. Apart from the hidden experts from Xianxia Tower, there was also a cultivator from Qiang sect, whose strength rivaled that of Yang Xiao. They had made thorough preparations, determined to ensure Yang Xiao perished on the way to Mongshan County. Beyond these overt and covert forces, there was also a man and a woman traveling under the guise of being the princess's retainers. They were Xiang Yang and Jiang Shang. Initially, Chen Yuan hadn't wanted to bring them along on this journey, but considering that Taiyan City wasn't exactly peaceful at the moment, it was better to have them along. As for Jian Wushuang himself, no one knew his whereabouts except for him. He had intended to conceal himself within the convoy, but later Jian Wushuang realized there was no need for that. His thought power extended outwards, already covering a 50-mile radius. At the speed of the convoy, it would take an hour to cover 50 miles, while Jian Wushuang only needed the time it took to burn a stick of incense. So he moved along, stopping occasionally to survey the surroundings. He could clearly see every person within 50 miles, whether in the open or hidden, yet no one could detect his presence. Such formidable thought power had already surpassed that of a nascent soul cultivator. This was Jian Wushuang's confidence. Relying on his thought power, he constantly monitored the situation within the convoy. Those openly visible weren't a concern to him. However, the two hidden experts were somewhat troublesome. Two figures stood before them, one of whom was a 7-coin Xianxia guard, while the other exuded a towering demonic aura, likely the supreme elder of the Qiang sect, whose strength had reached the nascent soul stage. However, it was neither a true nor a false nascent soul, but rather a dead nascent soul cultivator. Cultivating this kind of nascent soul naturally led to overwhelming demonic flames. As such, dead nascent soul cultivators required countless living infants as nourishment. Living infants, of course, referred to babies who were still alive. Although Jian Wushuang had seen much in his time, encountering this demonic cultivator in this mortal world still surprised him. The peculiarity of the cultivation technique, combined with the reckless behavior of the cultivation world here, was a rarity. In the mortal cultivation world outside, such a demonic figure would likely be hunted down by the righteous path, with no rest until one of them perished. The righteous and demonic paths were irreconcilable, always clashing, all for the sake of upholding a single principle of the Tao. Where there were those who pursued the righteous path, there would inevitably be those who fell into the demonic path. But this world lacked such a balance. Perhaps it was due to the rule of the Tang Emperor, or perhaps because the sects within the cultivation world had grown too desolate. For instance, in the entire Eastern Lands cultivation world, sects had withered, long gone was their former prosperity, and even a complete inheritance had not been passed down for ages. Most sect cultivators could only reach the golden core stage at best. Those few who managed to become nascent soul stage cultivators had either encountered ancient fortuitous events or possessed exceptional talent. Unfortunately, the spiritual energy in this world had dimmed, and the Tao of heaven was sealed, making ascension impossible, which meant that for many years, no strong experts had emerged from the divine aspect realm. In Jian Wushuang's view, it wouldn't take many more years before this mortal world would completely transform into a peaceful land, with no more cultivators remaining. Given the current situation, there was still hope for advancing to the divine aspect realm in the next century. But beyond that, the prospects looked bleak. The divine aspect realm was a critical threshold manifesting one's dharma form. That was the true realm for displaying divine abilities. Even with Jian Wushuang's powerful thought power, if he were targeted by a divine aspect realm cultivator, he would be captured by their spatial shrinking abilities. Therefore, the absence of divine aspect realm experts was fortunate for him. Whoosh! Standing atop the branches of a bush, Jian Wushuang exhaled a breath, and his figure flashed as he continued on his journey, always staying ahead of the group. The speed of the convoy couldn't compare to that of cultivators. After traveling for most of the day, they had just barely left the vicinity of Taiyan City. By dusk, they finally reached the border of Mongshan County, still some distance away from Mongshan City. The captain of the Imperial Guards glanced at the sky, slowing the pace and approaching the carriage. He called out loudly, "Lord Chun, I suggest we find an inn to rest for the night, and head straight for Mongshan City first thing tomorrow." "Very well. You handle the arrangements." Chun Yuan accepted the suggestion. He had come this time only to follow orders. Whether or not the mission succeeded didn't matter, but he had to heed the advice. Even if he did nothing at all, returning to the capital would bring no punishment. He was simply being cautious, fearful of any unforeseen incidents. If this Dong Biao turned out to be someone under the emperor's orders, aiming to eliminate Xianxia, then he would have to obey, or else face questioning and punishment upon returning to the capital. However, he had no concern for Xiao's safety, because Jian Wushuang was watching in secret. At this moment, Jian Wushuang stood atop a tree 30 miles away, his figure concealed in the shadows of dusk. His thought power expanded, and every word spoken by Dong Biao reached his ears clearly. This Dong Biao. There's something off about him. Jian Wushuang's brow twitched. Just 10 miles away, there was an inn, but it appeared brand new, almost as if it had been prepared specifically for their rest. Inside, there were only 3 people. A shopkeeper, a waiter, and a cook. 3 people. Yet none of them emitted any aura. This was what surprised Jian Wushuang. He knew that his thought power was now several times stronger than that of the perfect nascent soul stage, comparable to the divine appearance stage. Yet, he couldn't sense any aura from the 3 of them. It's impossible that all 3 are at the divine appearance stage. Jian Wushuang shook his head, dismissing such a ridiculous thought. No aura, and even their eyes were void of any soul. There was only one possibility: puppets. Who would have thought that this world actually possesses puppet techniques? This is considered top-tier divine power in an ordinary cultivation world. It must be an ancient inheritance from the northern region glacier. He didn't believe that the cultivators of this world, whether at the golden core or nascent soul stage, could create puppets. After all, this was the lowest level of the cultivation world. They didn't even have enough resources, companions, or land to support the crafting of puppets. The Tao of the cultivation world differed greatly. Take, for example, the Greenfire world from back then, which was a top-tier cultivation world. Later, the Divine Power universe appeared, which was no longer just a cultivation world. It divided the entire material realm into upper and lower worlds. To put it simply, the construction of the world had 5 levels. These were the 5 major layers, and within each there could be many subdivisions, though Jian Wushuang didn't delve too deeply into them. He categorized the world he had emerged from. The earliest continents were considered the second-layer world, which also included the later Greenfire world. The first layer was the entirely mundane world, a paradise where there was no survival of the fittest. The heavenly Tao was relatively fair, and everyone faced birth, aging, sickness, and death, along with the exhaustion of lifespan. The second-layer world was where the heavenly Tao allowed some extremely gifted individuals to defy the natural order, entering the path of cultivation and mastering the laws of creation and destruction. The third-layer world encompassed universes like the Divine Power universe and the Void Power universe, which included countless material worlds that merged to form a universe. Such a universe was a product of the heavenly Tao. At its peak were the ancestral gods. No matter how much one defied the heavens, there was only so much one could achieve. Only by going to the great Yen Huanyu and entering the original universe birthed by time and space could one advance further. This was the formidable nature of the fourth-layer world. In the universe born from primal forces, even the Tao could be controlled. Both the universe and time-space could be governed. This included the realm god continent as well. However, the realm god continent was the pinnacle of the fourth-layer world. It existed between the starry sky and time-space. One could become a universe god at its peak. As for the time-space gods, Jian Wushuang wasn't entirely sure. Since entering this world, he believed that the so-called universe gods and time-space gods didn't differ in terms of realms but in a specific type of power. Back then, Miexing was still considered a starry sky god. He didn't think Miexing's strength was particularly formidable. If he could return to his peak, dealing with 10 peak Miexings wouldn't be a problem. Universe gods, time-space gods, starry sky gods, these were merely titles. For example, universe gods didn't have levels. They were distinguished by the strength of their power. Those with strong power were 9-star universe gods, while the weak ones were 1-star universe gods. A powerful universe god could certainly kill a time-space god or even a starry sky god. It all depended on divine power. The divine power of the universe and that of time-space were undoubtedly different. Perhaps only after crossing the divine tribulation and heading into the starry sky would one understand. But that was still a long way off for him, just a fleeting thought in his mind. He then swiftly moved toward the strange inn. A distance of 10 miles was covered in just a few leaps, and he arrived at the inn's entrance. "Waiter, I'd like a room." Jian Wushuang wore a cloak, his face obscured, but from his attire, he resembled a martial arts master. Carrying a sword on his back, he looked like a wandering swordsman, his face hidden as he journeyed far. The waiter appeared dull-eyed, but his hands and feet were quick, and his tone carried the air of the common folk. He eagerly welcomed Jian Wushuang inside. "Would you prefer an upper room or a middle room?" The waiter bent over, bowing his head with a smile. Jian Wushuang took out a money pouch from his waist and slammed it onto the table, declaring loudly, "An upper room, and bring me 2 jars of good wine, a pound of cooked beef, and a plate of peanuts. Right away, sir. Please wait a moment. I'll arrange it immediately." His arrangement was merely shouting back to the kitchen and then retrieving a key from the innkeeper, which he respectfully handed to Jian Wushuang. Taking the key, Jian Wushuang pulled out a piece of silver from his pouch and casually tossed it to the waiter, saying generously, "This is for you." With that, he headed straight upstairs. After a short while, the waiter enthusiastically knocked on the door and entered, placing the wine on the table before respectfully retreating. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the bed, not touching the wine. His thought power spread out, enveloping a 50-mile radius, always keeping an eye on the convoy. He wanted to be thorough in his actions, not letting the presence of this strange make him think he knew everything. He continued to watch the convoy and kept his focus on Xianxia. He needed to ensure that Xianxia remained safe. Then, he would find an opportunity to ask about matters related to the Jiang kingdom, especially regarding Xianxiang. Xianxiang. Jian Wushuang's thoughts triggered memories from years ago. The events of that time could not be severed. Because of his helpless actions, Hui Qing's Dao heart had wavered several times. This was all cause and effect. If it hadn't been for the coercion of the White King. Sigh! Jian Wushuang let out a long sigh. To speak of this matter, one must blame Zhenling. If Zhenling hadn't brought Demon Sound Mountain to the heavenly realm, he wouldn't have gone there to receive the legacy of the physical trials. Without that legacy, he wouldn't have entered the heavenly realm early, and thus wouldn't have been captured by the White King. This led to him being coerced by the deities and the White King, forced into a blood sacrifice. Inadvertently, he had killed Xianxiang's brother during his mortal period. This had caused such a mess. He had thought this matter was long past, but upon entering this vast world, he unexpectedly found traces of Xianxiang once more. Could it be that she has been reincarnated? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow but quickly dismissed the thought. A universe master who had fallen in the long river of time and space would not come to the realm god continent. Nor would they enter this world. There must be a reason behind it. He could only explore it slowly. But no matter what, this time he wouldn't make the same mistake. He would not repeat the same error twice. No matter if you are the Xianxiang of old, I will safely bring you to Hui Qing. Outside the inn, the previously peaceful street suddenly bustled with activity. A group of wild-looking foreigners from the north, driving beast-drawn carriages, collided head-on with Chen Yuan's convoy coming from the south. The two sides began arguing outside over the stables. As a captain of the Imperial Guard, Dong Biao had fought on the battlefield and battled these wild foreigners before. Seeing them now made his eyes burn with rage. Although relations with the foreigners had eased in recent years, with both sides engaging in trade, they still wouldn't show each other any kindness. Damned foreigners! Dong Biao cursed inwardly. However, this time they had important matters to attend to, and there were strong individuals among these foreigners as well. Not wanting to cause unnecessary trouble, he scowled and reprimanded. "You savages, don't you prefer living in the wild? Why are you staying in an inn?" His words were harsh, but they were already the most polite he could muster. Otherwise, he would have simply told them to get lost. The foreigners didn't back down either. One of them, a seductive woman with bronze skin adorned with various ornaments, glared at him and retorted angrily, "Humph! Aren't you Central Plains people always boasting about being a land of etiquette? According to your sage's teachings, shouldn't you be treating your guests with respect?" Her words stunned Dong Biao. He hadn't expected her to be so familiar with the Tang dynasty. "Now it seems that you've ignored the words of your sages, only picking the parts that benefit you. How hypocritical!" The seductive woman sneered at Dong Biao. For a moment, Dong Biao didn't know how to respond. He had never been humiliated like this before. If this were a battlefield, he would have already drawn his blade and cursed his enemy. Courting death. Dong Biao roared in fury, drawing his sword. 100 imperial guards immediately drew their weapons as well, tightening their reins, ready to charge at any moment. However, Chen Yuan, who had been observing from the carriage, stopped Dong Biao at this critical moment. Wait! Chen Yuan lifted the curtain and stepped out, his gaze falling on the seductive woman from the Tsang clan. This matter could be handled either lightly or seriously. It wouldn't be wise to kill this foreign merchant caravan over a verbal dispute. That would be inviting trouble. As the officer in charge, he would have to take responsibility if something went wrong, but he also needed to handle the situation effectively. If he didn't, it would undermine his subordinates' authority, which would in turn undermine his own. Although he hadn't spent many years in officialdom, he had learned plenty of techniques for managing subordinates. He first signaled Dong Biao to sheath his sword, then dismounted and approached the Tsang clan's merchant caravan. The Xianxia guards followed closely behind. Among the 10 Xianxia guards were elite Jinwu guards, whose imposing presence alone could crush the caravan. Even the sharp-tongued, seductive woman couldn't help but take a half-step back. It wasn't until an old man behind her gently placed his hand on her shoulder that she regained her composure. Those are Jinwu guards from the Xianxia guard. It's best not to act recklessly, a voice warned in her mind. The seductive woman's expression changed slightly, but she responded with a subtle nod. Seeing that his message had been received, Chen Yuan raised his hand and instructed, "Show some respect." Only then did the Jinwu guards retract their overwhelming aura, allowing the foreigners to breathe freely again. They gasped for air, as if a weight had been lifted from their chests. These people in battle gear must all be great immortals. Who is this man? Some beast tamers in the caravan, despite their shock, couldn't help but marvel at the power of the Tang dynasty, where 10 great immortals were protecting a mere mortal. The man must be one of the highest-ranking individuals in the Tang dynasty. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many great immortals guarding him. In the wild regions, the Tsang clan referred to cultivators at the Golden Core stage as great immortals. Just like how the eastern lands called them immortals, it was merely a title. Chen Yuan glanced at the people who had been subdued and softened his expression, speaking kindly. "Young lady, you mentioned the way of hospitality earlier. Indeed, that is a tradition of the Tang dynasty. Isn't it delightful to have friends come from afar? Of course, we should show hospitality, and we should offer the best." These words immediately won over many members of the foreign merchant caravan. After all, standing before them was a harmless-looking scholar, surrounded by a group of intimidating great immortals. It was only natural for them to develop a favorable impression of him. Moreover, in their eyes, it was astonishing that someone of such high status would speak so courteously to them. Does this mean you intend to give the stable to us?" The seductive woman's voice was sharp, her alluring gaze fixed on Chen Yuan as she waited for his response. Chen Yuan smiled faintly, but his tone quickly shifted to one of seriousness as he said, "We will give it, of course. But before we do, I need to make you understand the essence of the Great Tang's etiquette. Just because you are guests doesn't mean you can act recklessly." As soon as he finished speaking, his aura became imposing, and the once frail scholar appeared as if he had transformed into a saint. The concession of etiquette is the host's choice, not something the guest demands. I hope you remember that what this official gives you is yours. What is not given cannot be asked for, and certainly cannot be taken by force. After speaking, Chen Yuan paid no attention to their shocked expressions. With a wave of his hand, he loudly commanded, "Captain Dong, lead the Imperial Guards to rest in the nearby woods. Let them have the stable. The rest of you, follow me to the inn for some rest." After giving his orders, he smiled slightly, cupped his hands toward the foreign caravan, and then turned to lead his men into the inn. Dong Biao, his eyes burning with admiration, felt deeply satisfied by the words he had just heard. He found it even more satisfying than giving the other party a beating and now held a newfound respect and reverence for Chen Yuan. The Xianxian guards, however, who had seen much in their time, felt it was nothing special. They remained silent, showing no particular reaction as they continued to follow Chen Yuan. Xiangyang and Jiangshang, who trailed behind Chen Yuan, each had their own thoughts and did not give the matter much consideration. Upstairs, Jian Wushuang's lips curled into a faint smile. It was nothing more than a petty trick. He then withdrew his thought power until it covered only a 3-mile radius, then stopped. An invisible force swept through the entire inn, monitoring everyone present, including the foreigners. Both groups entered the inn one after the other. Due to the number of people, they all sat down in the first-floor hall. Having learned from the earlier encounter, these foreigners no longer dared to provoke anyone. They obediently drank their wine and ate their meat. Chen Yuan, having ridden all day, had little appetite. He drank only a bowl of clear water before calling the innkeeper to prepare a room upstairs for him to rest. The Xianxian guards, tasked with his protection, were not interested in feasting downstairs either. They rose and took up rooms next to Chen Yuan's. With their golden core cultivation, their thought power was more than enough to cover the entire inn, ensuring Chen Yuan's safety. The sky grew completely dark. The inn, however, remained brightly lit. In the first-floor hall, besides the dozen or so foreigners from the caravan, there was also Dong Biao and his imperial guards. The guards, being numerous, had chosen to eat in shifts. As for resting, they had no choice but to use the sky as their blanket and the ground as their bed. Both groups were boisterous by nature, and soon enough, they had all ended up at the same table. Particularly, a few burly men from the caravan struck up a conversation with Dong Biao, and the more they talked, the more animated they became. The seductive woman was by their side, urging them to drink. Despite having been ordered not to drink, Dong Biao, under the pressure of their hospitality, took a sip to be polite. But with alcohol, once you have the first sip, the second follows. And once one person drinks, others do as well. Otherwise, it would be seen as unfair treatment. Before long, everyone was getting along like old friends, drinking one jar of wine after another. The innkeeper, however, did not even raise an eyebrow. He showed no sign of being pleased by the sudden influx of business. Instead, there was a glint of murderous intent in his eyes as he glanced at Dong Biao. Add something to their wine. Let's send these fools on their way sooner rather than later. The innkeeper's assistant, grinning slyly, was not at all surprised. He even called out loudly, "Sure thing! 10 more jars of good wine coming right up." With that, he headed to the wine cabinet, grabbed the jars and brought them over. But this time, the wine was different. Within the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the burly foreigners and the imperial guards, including Captain Dong Biao, were all flushed and unsteady on their feet. Tonight ends here. Next time when we reach Tian City, I'll treat you to the best wine. Dong Biao mumbled as he staggered toward the door. He had no idea that everyone else had already collapsed on the tables, unable to get up. Fortunately, his strength was formidable enough to allow him to walk out steadily. Once he was far enough away, the assistant's smile faded. After shutting the door, his tone and demeanor changed as he scanned the foreigners and glanced at the innkeeper. "Get ready to move." The shopkeeper nodded and clapped his hands. A chef with a plump figure emerged from the kitchen. The three of them made no sound or movement detectable by even those in the nascent soul stage. But they couldn't escape the keen eye and thought power of Jian Wushuang. Just as the three were about to make their move, several powerful beings within the caravan suddenly stood up without warning. The drunken haze in their eyes vanished, replaced by a fierce and violent energy. Even the alluring woman among them revealed her true power. All 5 of them were cultivators at the Golden Core stage. 3 of them were in the late Golden Core stage, while the alluring woman was in the mid-stage. However, a red centipede slowly crawled out from her arm, growing larger by the second until it reached the thickness of a water barrel and stretched several meters long. "Heavenly centipede!" The shop assistant exclaimed. "You're not from the Tsong clan caravan. You're sorcerers from the Thousand Legs tribe." The Thousand Legs tribe was a savage tribe near the northern glaciers, with only a few thousand people. Yet their strength was incredibly formidable. Many children were born as innate beings, and even those with poor talent could become innate warriors as adults. In this tribe of a few thousand people, dozens of golden core cultivators could emerge. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. The Thousand Legs tribe had a powerful lineage of sorcerers who could control centipedes. The tribe was named after their totem, the centipede. The ferocious centipedes they raised were unmatched in the world, causing significant losses to the Tang dynasty multiple times. The alluring woman shifted her body and looked at the shop assistant with an eerie gaze. Even you puppets know about the heavenly centipede? Then let it send you on your way. Heh! Even if it's a heavenly centipede, it's still just flesh. The shop assistant tore off his shirt, revealing a body as black as ink, crafted from a unique crystalline material. Not only was it incredibly hard, but it also blocked any aura. The shopkeeper and the chef, on the other hand, had silver bodies, clearly made from different materials. The three of them had no aura, making it impossible to gauge their true strength. However, as the two sides clashed, the hall was instantly destroyed. Despite the fierce battle below, there was no movement from upstairs. Even if they were blind, they certainly weren't deaf. Everyone knew a fight had broken out below, but the identities of those involved remained unclear. The reason behind the conflict, however, likely had something to do with Xianxia within the group. Chen Yuan stood at the door, peeking through a crack and frowning deeply. Damn it! I should have known better and camped outside, Chen Yuan muttered in frustration. If they had stayed in the wilderness, it would have been easier for Jian Wushuang to remain hidden. Even if the Xianxia guards attacked, Jian Wushuang could have easily escaped. Let's hope everything goes smoothly. Next door, 10 Xianxia guards gathered together, all observing the battle. Yang Xiao, on the other hand, was alone in his room, also watching the fight. The great commander is truly a divine person. To have anticipated that we would stay at the inn and even encounter a mysterious expert's attack, he thought, his heart filled with admiration. Before leaving Tian City, the great commander had instructed him that if he encountered foreign races at the inn, he could choose to trust them. However, he was not to act rashly, because the great commander had a backup plan, and that plan was Jian Wushuang. After all, if there was help available, there was no need for Yang Xiao to take risks. At this moment, however, Yang Xiao was feeling a bit restless. Ever since he had taken on 9 opponents in Mongshan County, his strength had advanced once more. Within the Xianxia guards, he had received complete inheritance and had been granted treasures. Now all he lacked was an opportunity. Perhaps a great battle could help him find the breakthrough to the nascent soul stage. I wonder if Senior Wushuang is here. In this situation, should we just keep watching? Jiang Shang was a bit worried. The battle below was causing quite a commotion. Especially that centipede, its aura was even stronger than someone at the peak of the golden core stage. Under the control of the alluring woman, its combat power was nearly comparable to someone at the nascent soul stage. Yet, when it encountered the 3 puppets, it couldn't even inflict damage. Their defense was astonishing. It could be said that they were invincible within the golden core stage. Xiangyang stood with his arms crossed, also watching the battle, but his expression remained calm. He said, "Don't worry, these people are likely here for Yang Xiao. Since Brother Wushuang arranged for us to protect Chen Yuan, there's no need to intervene. Just watch." Okay. Jiang Shang nodded slightly. The reason she was a bit anxious was that Jian Wushuang had told her that Yang Xiao might know something about her mother. Therefore, she was worried that Yang Xiao might be killed. However, she trusted Jian Wushuang's abilities even more. Since the plan was already in place, it was surely foolproof. She had witnessed this firsthand when Jian Wushuang and Xiangyang, in just half a year, had led over 100,000 rebels out of Jiang Nation. This demonstrated his incredible planning ability. If Jian Wushuang knew how much confidence Jiang Shang had in him, he might feel embarrassed. At this moment, Jian Wushuang stood at the doorway, also watching the battle. His expression was filled with excitement. Even his body trembled. Spatial crystals. The shop assistant's body material was space crystal, which was why Jian Wushuang hadn't noticed him earlier despite being so close. It was due to the unique properties of space crystals. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he finally recognized it. Such a large space crystal. If I could obtain it, it would be enough to advance to the nascent soul stage. Jian Wushuang's heart trembled with excitement. He even forgot to speculate about the experts of the centipede tribe, because to him that was unimportant. The inn had been prepared for Xianxia, and these 3 puppets had also come to kill Xianxia. The centipede tribe's experts intervened, clearly intending to protect Xianxia. There was probably some scheme by Wei Jiuxian involved, but Jian Wushuang wasn't particularly interested in that. Right now, he only wanted to obtain the space crystal. The 3 puppets had no consciousness. They were being controlled by someone. To burn thought power and kill them, he had to target the thought power left on the puppets by their controller. But killing them from such a distance was too difficult. Even though Jian Wushuang's thought power was strong, he couldn't accomplish that, unless he found the mastermind hidden within the group who was controlling the puppets. I can't detect them. At first, he thought it was Dong Biao, but upon closer inspection, he didn't see anything suspicious about Dong Biao. Even his thought power was a mess, which didn't match the characteristics of someone remotely controlling puppets. If it wasn't Dong Biao as he had initially suspected, then who could it be? Could it be that the other person wasn't hiding within the group but, like him, had been secretly following the convoy all along? Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Unless the other person was in the divine appearance realm, or their thought power was somehow being shielded. He ruled out the possibility of the divine appearance realm first. Based on his deductions, if the other person could refine a puppet's body using space crystals, they likely had more space crystals and had crafted a treasure to shield their aura. That was probably the case. As long as their strength wasn't a threat to Jian Wushuang, he wasn't worried. After all, the puppets couldn't escape. With the situation right before his eyes, the priority now was to find the mastermind controlling the puppets. Who is it? Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with killing intent. He swept his thought power over everyone. If he truly couldn't find them, he wouldn't hesitate to kill them all. Especially those golden crow guards, after all, they were against him anyway. If they wanted to protect Xianxia sooner or later, there would be a conflict with them. He might as well strike first. Jian Wushuang gripped his sword sheath, his gaze rising to the sky. His divine sense condensed into a phantom figure in midair, looking down at the inn below. Wait a little longer. But Jian Wushuang's patience had its limits. At this moment, he had to take some action. Xianxia, you wouldn't want to surrender without a fight, would you? In the guest room, Xianxia was startled, knowing that it was a transmitted message. Immediately, a thought rose in his mind, and he responded through the transmission. Are you not planning to make a move? It seems Wei Jiuxian has already informed you, so I won't waste words. Right now, I suspect there's another hidden expert controlling the puppets. Their strength shouldn't be weak. To control 3 puppets so skillfully, they're likely at least a pseudonascent soul stage cultivator. I need to keep an eye on this person. You go down and help, and later someone will assist you. All you need to do is cooperate with the centipede tribe's experts and take down that puppet covered in black. Once that's done, I can lock onto the mastermind's position. Jian Wushuang told a small, well-intentioned lie, forcing Xianxia to take action. After all, there were still 2 strong experts watching from the shadows. The logic of striking first didn't need Jian Wushuang's reminder. All right, Xianxia agreed readily. He kicked open the door and shouted, "Enemy attack! Everyone, protect the inspector and retreat. I'll hold them off here." With that shout, Chun Yuan could no longer pretend to be dead in his room. At the same time, Xiangyang and Jiang Shang received Jian Wushuang's message, instructing them to assist. Master Chun, stay here and don't go out. I'm going to help Xianxia. Xiangyang cupped his hands, then immediately led Jiang Shang downstairs. The scene instantly became lively. Seeing these 2 figures, Xianxia wasn't surprised, but he was a bit troubled. Xiangyang and Jiang Shang's strength was too weak. Forget about helping. They might even become a burden. Xiangyang noticed Yang Zhao's odd look and nodded, saying, "You go ahead and fight. Don't worry about us." Their strength might not be impressive, but they still had their methods. Jiang Shang might be ordinary, but Xiangyang, who was once a universe master, still had some tricks up his sleeve. Although his combat power wasn't great, since the opponent was just a puppet, he could still interfere and restrain them. Otherwise, he'd be nothing more than dead weight, and all those years of cultivation would have been wasted. "All right." Yang Xiao no longer hesitated and shouted to the nearby centipede tribe experts. "What are you waiting for? Attack." Well, didn't your Master Chan say earlier that you shouldn't force things?" The seductive woman teased before commanding the Tianzu centipede to attack the shop assistant again. This time, everyone focused on a single puppet, completely ignoring the shopkeeper and the chubby chef. The puppet's defense was astonishing, but its strength was still manageable, allowing it to hold out for a while. "Exterminate evil sword!" Yang Xiao roared, and in an instant, a long sword with a wine gourd attached to it unsheathed. This sword, named Exterminate Evil, embodied the essence of Yang Zhao's swordsmanship. With a single strike, the ancient iron sword surrounded by black crystals pushed the shop assistant back. Although it couldn't harm the puppet, it was enough to repel it. The others unleashed their fiercest moves as well, especially the Tianzu centipede, which took the opportunity to wrap itself around the shop assistant and spew venom. The intense corrosion, however, failed to damage the puppet in the slightest and only managed to bind it. Jian Wushuang had been observing the battle, but he hadn't been idle. While searching for suspicious individuals, he kept a close watch on the two experts lurking in the shadows. Neither the demonic cultivator, the death infant, nor the 7-coin Xianxia guard had made a move. If Jian Wushuang acted now and the person controlling the puppet joined forces with them, he might meet his end here today. At this moment, all those behind the scenes were engaged in a battle of patience. It was as if the fighters below were merely their pawns, and even if they were injured or fell, they remained indifferent. "Humph, you hide well, but let's force you out." Jian Wushuang chuckled softly. A burst of intangible thought power shot from the ceiling above. The 7-coin Xianxia guard, who had been hiding, felt a strong wave of thought power and was instantly exposed. The thought power wasn't meant to attack but was a friendly reminder. A reminder that Jian Wushuang knew exactly where they were hiding. He intended to force them to reveal themselves. Crash! Fragments of wood fell from the ceiling, and a figure dropped down. Though they wore plain clothes and even a bamboo hat, Yang Xiao, as a 6-coin Xianxia guard, recognized them at a glance. "Guardian Tongshan, since you're here, why not lend a hand?" Yang Xiao had long known that a powerful figure was lurking in the shadows, but he hadn't expected it to be Guardian Tongshan of the Xianxia guards. Guardian Tongshan, aligned with Guardian Nanshan, had likely been hiding in the dark to eliminate him. Now that he had revealed himself, Yang Xiao was uncertain of his intentions. However, he had no choice but to expose Tongshan's identity, ensuring that Tongshan wouldn't pose a threat to him. Yang Xiao didn't believe that Tongshan would dare to attack him in front of so many people. The Xianxia guards were forbidden from killing each other, a crime punishable by death with no exceptions. The guardian, Tongshan, who had just appeared, was grinding his teeth in frustration. He yanked off his bamboo hat, glancing around before finally fixing his gaze on Yang Xiao. With resentment, he said, "I am only responsible for protecting the Imperial Inspector. These small fry aren't worth my effort." He wasn't foolish. At this moment, he couldn't make a move against Yang Xiao, but he also wouldn't lend him a hand. These puppets were clearly here to kill Yang Xiao, so he absolutely wouldn't help. Even if it meant exposing his identity, he stood at a distance with an air of indifference, coldly watching the events unfold. "Tongshan, have you forgotten who gave you a meal back then?" Yang Zhao's face twisted with rage. Initially, he hadn't wanted to bother with him, but the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Tongshan had originally been a mere wanderer in the martial world, quite ordinary and not even an innate talent. When he first arrived in the capital, he clashed with a young noble, and the noble's guards had severely injured him. If it hadn't been for Wei Jiuxian's intervention, Tong Shan would have frozen to death on the streets. But what happened later? After joining the Jinwu Guard, Tong Shan grew closer to Nanshan, eventually becoming estranged from Wei Jiuxian. Now he was repaying kindness with betrayal. With Yang Zhao's straightforward temperament, how could he not be enraged? Humph! You grew up within the Xianxia Guard, so how would you understand my struggles? Tong Shan's expression was ugly. Although he retorted, he guiltily turned his head away, avoiding Yang Xiao, who was fiercely battling the puppets. He appeared disdainful, but his eyes couldn't hide the truth. There was a trace of reminiscence in his eyes, memories of when he first joined the Xianxia Guard. He hadn't forgotten the past. He knew who his benefactor was and who had helped him reach this point. However, everything he did now was to avoid returning to his former miserable state. He believed he wasn't wrong. I'm not wrong. It's you all who have been too fortunate. Tong Shan inwardly defended himself, his thoughts gradually calming. He began analyzing the current situation. As one of the 4 guardians of the Xianxia Guard, he had both the capability and strength. From Yang Zhao's active participation, he could infer that there were others backing him in Wei Jiuxian's scheme. The 2 guests from the princess's mansion are also suspicious. Tong Shan's eyes flickered. Initially, he thought these 2 were Wei Jiuxian's plants within the princess's residence, but he hadn't expected them to be so formidable. Although they appeared to be ordinary golden core cultivators, they managed to survive against the puppets and even entangled them, clearly possessing extraordinary skills beyond that of regular golden core cultivators. Interesting. Let's see what other tricks you have up your sleeve. Tong Shan wasn't worried at all. He knew that a strong expert from the Qiang sect was still lurking in the shadows. Though he looked down on demonic cultivators, he couldn't deny their strength, especially a nascent infant expert. Their power was on par with his. If they acted now, they could definitely turn the tide and perhaps even kill Yang Xiao on the spot, making the inspection of Mongshan County a failure. However, he didn't know that the nascent infant expert in the shadows was also under the watchful eye of Jian Wushuang. You're really good at being patient. Jian Wushuang's thought power drifted through the night like a ghost, always focused on that nascent infant cultivator. Since he couldn't find the person secretly controlling the puppets, he could only keep an eye on this demonic sect elder. This person's strength was formidable. Even if Jian Wushuang launched a sneak attack, he couldn't guarantee a one-hit kill. He had initially brought Tong Shan out to force him to help, but now that Tong Shan refused to act, Jian Wushuang had no choice. As for the demonic sect's supreme elder, without any constraints, if Jian Wushuang exposed him, he would likely retaliate by attacking Yang Xiao directly. So, the more patient this person was, the more advantageous it was for Jian Wushuang. He only needed to keep an eye on him with his thought power while focusing most of his energy on finding the mastermind controlling the puppets. Where are they? Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, no longer sweeping the area with his thought power. He couldn't detect the person's aura with thought power alone. There must be a space crystal concealing them. Now, he could only rely on his deductions to find them. When they first spotted the inn, Chun Yuan's team was still 30 miles away. At that time, the puppets were stiff and their eyes were lifeless. But as the team drew closer, the puppets became more animated. Especially after Jian Wushuang entered the inn, the innkeeper moved like a normal person. It seems I exposed myself too early. Jian Wushuang felt a bit frustrated. He had been too careless. He shouldn't have revealed himself so soon. Instead, he should have found a place to hide or even concealed himself within the team. In the end, they startled the snake in the grass, and the other party never showed up. 10 Golden Crow guards, each with a powerful aura. All of them are cultivators at the Golden Core stage. This can't be wrong. He began to speculate one by one. There weren't too many people present. Simply put, there were only 4 types of people. One group consisted of their own people, Xiangyang, Jiangshang, and then Chen Yuan. Yang Xiao and the powerful warriors from the 1,000-foot tribe were currently in the same camp. As for their reason, he didn't know, but it seemed to be to protect Yang Zhao's life for the time being. The second group had more people, including 3 puppets and the person controlling them from behind the scenes, followed by Guardian Tongshan, the supreme elder of the demon sect, and then those golden crow guards inside the house, all here to kill Xianxia. The third group, Jian Wushuang's side, was caught in the middle, and even Chen Yuan was in the same situation. The fourth group consisted of the Imperial Guards, 100 elite martial soldiers at the peak of the Hotian realm, plus 1 martial artist at the peak of the Hotian realm. Was this team redundant? Every time the court dispatched an inspector, they would indeed send the Imperial Guards. Normally, it wouldn't be excessive. But this time, Jian Wushuang found it a bit odd, because Dong Biao himself was problematic. However, he was just a martial artist at the peak of the Xiantian realm. Although he was responsible for leading the team, he couldn't do much more. Yang Xiao alone could overturn the entire Imperial Guard. What made Jian Wushuang most suspicious was that Dong Biao clearly knew the inside story. Yet at such a critical moment, he dared to drink with those powerful warriors from the 1,000-foot tribe. And he drank until he was unconscious. A smokescreen. Jian Wushuang saw the crux of the problem, his eyes swirling with colors, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of contempt as he thought to himself, Dong Biao, a mere warrior, couldn't be this clever. This drunken act must be guided by someone behind the scenes. Moreover, the fact that Dong Biao knew the tavern had issues and deliberately got drunk to avoid being forced to take action during the fight was telling. Although Dong Biao wasn't strong, if the Imperial Guards intervened, it would represent the court. That would change things. Once Dong Biao made a move, the Golden Crow Guards would also be forced to act. It seems I need to meet this Lieutenant Dong. Jian Wushuang stood up, crossed the windowsill, and his figure disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already at the camp where the Imperial Guards were stationed. At this moment, the camp was pitch black, with no one on duty, and the soldiers lay sprawled on the ground. Some had been drugged, but most had been affected by a spell that made them sleep even more soundly. Rosemary. Jian Wushuang walked closer and immediately noticed the subtle signs. No wonder my thought power couldn't detect any issues. Such a simple method. I truly hadn't paid much attention to it. He touched his nose and called out toward Dong Biao's tent. Lieutenant Dong, will you come out and meet me yourself? Or will you have the person behind you come out to meet me? Dong Biao himself had only minor issues, but from the details it was clear that everything was connected to him. Although Dong Biao's aura seemed fine, he always managed to make quick decisions, suggesting that the person controlling the puppets must be right by his side. Gazing at the tent, Jian Wushuang casually snapped his fingers, and the torches stuck in the ground around him instantly lit up. Hiding won't do you any good. Seeing that no one came out, Jian Wushuang made a hand seal with one hand, and a wind control spell immediately swept through, tearing the tent open in an instant. He didn't hold back and rushed forward, intending to resolve the situation quickly. As he got closer, he realized that the 3 people inside the tent no longer had heartbeats. The aura that his thought power had detected came from a token on the chest of each person. An ancient token. Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow. He recognized the token, and he even had one on him, which he had obtained from a spirit creature in the Jiang Kingdom's royal palace long ago. He had originally intended to study it but found that the power on the token was peculiar and impossible to activate, so he had given up on it. Unexpectedly, he encountered it here. Holding 3 tokens, the top bore a white eye. The one he had obtained earlier had a black eye. Clearly, there was a difference in status between the two. While he was still in shock, the fight inside the tavern suddenly changed. Not good. Jian Wushuang's heart sank, realizing he had fallen into a diversion trap. He hurriedly tried to rush back to the tavern, but as soon as he took a step forward, he found himself back at his original spot. A barrier rose around him. It was a formation, but the formation contained a divine power that was quite common in the mundane world, shrinking the ground into an inch. For Jian Wushuang, this was indeed a common technique, but in this small world it was rare. Only a high-level cultivator at the divine aspect stage could possess such divine power. Even setting up a formation that shrinks the ground would require someone at the divine aspect stage. Jian Wushuang's brow twitched instantly. This time, his plan had been manipulated, and there were significant flaws in his calculations regarding his opponent. A puppet crafted from space crystals could not possibly be an ordinary cultivator. Even a nascent soul cultivator couldn't do it. It was likely someone at the divine aspect stage. However, one thing puzzled him. Why would someone at the divine aspect stage need to set up a formation? Why not just kill directly? No, at my peak strength, I was still a 9th-star universe god, wasn't I? Now, I'm also calculating every move in this broken place just to recover my strength. At this thought, he understood. If we're all in the same boat, then let's see who has the stronger skills. He didn't take this formation seriously, only considering that the person who set it up was probably at the divine aspect stage. But now that he understood, he no longer worried. Buzz! A surge of thought power erupted from him, like a dragon in the night, tearing towards the hidden demon god in the darkness. Jian Wushuang stood motionless, his eyes shining brightly. The battle of thought power was swift, and in an instant, he had torn open a gap in the formation. Hold on! His figure shot out in an instant, dashing towards the tavern at the fastest speed. It was a diversion. What would come next would undoubtedly be a lethal attack. If he were even a moment late, he might not see Xianxia in person. But that wasn't the most important thing. If Xiangyang and Jiangshang died, there would be no one left to reason with. These two were his dearest loved ones. They absolutely couldn't die. Xiangyang had connections to Xing Luo, and Jiangshang was Jiangshang's daughter. They couldn't die no matter what. Although he didn't know how the other party had managed to produce this daughter, or if this Jiangshang was the same Jiangshang he knew, taking her out would surely surprise Hu Qing. If Hu Qing was delighted, his mood might naturally round out, and he might even break through directly. So, they absolutely couldn't die. Boom! In his haste to reach the inn as quickly as possible, he didn't even bother with the door and crashed straight through. Crash! The shattered wooden boards flew out instantly. As the dust settled, Jian Wushuang appeared inside the inn. Thank goodness, they're all alive. When he rushed in, he hadn't dared to use his thought power to check their auras. Seeing his arrival, Chen Yuan on the upper floor let out a sigh of relief. Just moments ago, Yang Xiao and his group were about to capture the innkeeper. But then a mysterious expert appeared and severely injured everyone with a single strike. If it weren't for that skyfoot centipede, Yang Xiao and the others would have been slain by the mysterious expert by now. Brother Wushuang, you're finally here. Xiangyang's breath was unstable, clearly having just survived a life-threatening situation. He was still filled with lingering fear as he hurriedly pulled Jian Wushuang behind him, feeling a bit safer only after standing in his shadow. Jian Wushuang, however, didn't seem too afraid of death. His eyes remained cold, his head held high with pride, and his voice sharp as he said, "Senior Wushuang, it was that black-clad expert who struck just now. With a single palm, he severely injured everyone. He must be a powerful cultivator in the nascent soul stage." Jian Wushuang glanced at the calm and composed Jian Shang, feeling satisfied. This reminded him of the Jian Shang from back in Qishan Temple, who remained cool-headed even when being hunted down, displaying both courage and wisdom in the face of his pursuers. Senior Wushuang? Jian Shang felt uneasy under the constant gaze, his small face blushing slightly as he lowered his eyes and softened his voice. Ahem! Jian Wushuang quickly averted his gaze, coughing lightly to cover his embarrassment before turning to look at the mysterious black-clad elder. The elder had a head full of silver hair and wore black robes, exuding a vigorous aura. This wasn't the demonic expert from the dark sect. It was a formidable figure he had never sensed or discovered before. Even now, standing face to face, Jian Wushuang couldn't detect the elder's presence. Your formation is much more troublesome than any puppet. Jian Wushuang took a step forward, his figure suddenly rising as he met the elder's gaze head-on. The black-clad elder, standing on the shattered beam, looked astonished. Forcing himself to remain calm, he asked, "How did you break the grand array I set up?" "Simple," Jian Wushuang thought to himself, and a surge of illusory power rose within him, This was the power of thought manifested into consciousness. He could even create a consciousness avatar. If he were to burn this power, he could kill even a nascent soul stage cultivator. So strong, the black-clad elder trembled inwardly. Then, as if realizing something, he exclaimed in shock, "Are you a cultivator from the upper realm?" He could see that Jian Wushuang's aura was only at the golden core stage since Jian Wushuang hadn't concealed his presence. But that powerful thought power was already comparable to the divine appearance stage. That's why he instinctively mentioned the upper realm. Upper realm. Jian Wushuang's heart stirred. Although he knew of the upper realm, he didn't understand much about it. In fact, he hadn't even fully grasped the nature of the small world, with its figures like the true immortal of the Tang dynasty or the creator of the princess tomb. At that moment, someone happened to clarify things for him. So he pretended to be calm and said, "Everyone's the same. What's there to be surprised about? Oh, do you think I'm also a strong practitioner from the upper realm?" The black-clad elder's previously tense expression relaxed slightly. Both were schemers, their minds working faster than ordinary people. With just one sentence, he deduced that Jian Wushuang wasn't from the upper realm. Since the black-clad elder himself wasn't a strong practitioner from the upper realm, he had assumed Jian Wushuang was one based on the other's thought power. But now that Jian Wushuang claimed to be from the upper realm as well, it made his words seem less credible. The black-clad elder wasn't from the upper realm but was instead a powerful practitioner native to this world. The method of distinguishing between the upper and lower realms was through power. The power systems of the upper realm and the lower realm were completely different. Although the black-clad elder had never been to the upper realm, he had glimpsed the divine techniques and secret methods of the upper realm through his inheritance, which differed greatly from those of the lower realm. "I haven't asked for your name yet, sir." Jian Wushuang. The moment Jian Wushuang announced his name, his brow furrowed slightly, realizing he had just misspoken. Now, the black-clad elder had begun to shift the topic. It was clear that the elder would no longer believe anything he said. "I miscalculated. If the other party had come from the upper realm, he would have recognized the space crystal and wouldn't have used such a treasure to refine a puppet. Instead, he would have restored his own strength. Obviously, he doesn't recognize the space crystal, which is why he used it to make a puppet." Jian Wushuang sighed inwardly. In just one encounter, he had already made 2 missteps. The opponent certainly possessed a mind as sharp as a 7-orifice exquisite heart. Although this was a mundane world, one couldn't underestimate the wisdom of ordinary people. When they found their path of cultivation blocked, some would choose to walk the path of the Tao, the heart, or the kidneys. It was evident that this opponent had chosen the heart. His mental state was very strong. When faced with challenges, he remained calm and could unravel lies with just a few words, subtly shifting the topic and diverting attention. In this way, Jian Wushuang found himself completely at a disadvantage. After exchanging names, Jian Wushuang became cautious with his words, and instead began to deduce the elder's identity through his name. Zhou Chun Immortal. That was the elder's Tao name. The ability to refine puppets meant he had surely obtained secret divine techniques from the upper realm. It wasn't surprising that he knew about the upper realm's powerful practitioners. In terms of cultivation, he might have once been a practitioner at the divine form level but had somehow fallen to the nascent soul stage. He was likely in a cooperative relationship with the Tang Emperor now. After all, such a powerful figure in the mundane world wouldn't be subservient to imperial power. Cooperation. Following this train of thought, Jian Wushuang spoke up. "Taoist Zhou Chun, since we've laid everything out, why don't we be more straightforward? This time, give me some face and spare Yang Zhao's life. Whatever you need, just name it." Jian Wushuang lowered his stance. He couldn't gauge the elder's strength, but the elder was at least a mid-nascent soul stage practitioner. If it came to a fight, Jian Wushuang had no problem with it, but there were so many people present. If Yang Xiao died, it would be troublesome. He regretted not asking Yang Xiao about the matters of the Jiang kingdom earlier, which had led to this situation. Zhou Chun Immortal gently stroked his beard and smiled faintly. "In the mundane world, there's a saying that I've always appreciated. Let me share it with you, Taoist." "Please," Jian Wushuang gestured. The one who eats the Lord's salary must serve the Lord and relieve the Lord's worries. After Zhou Chun Immortal finished speaking, his demeanor remained calm and indifferent. However, Jian Wushuang's expression darkened. The elder gave no face at all. The message was simple. Since he had received benefits, he must fulfill his obligations. Yang Zhao's life couldn't be saved. Since that was the case, there was nothing more to discuss with the elder. Xiangyang, take Jiang Shang upstairs and stay with Chun Yuan. When the time is right, take Chun Yuan and leave. He silently transmitted his voice, and his thought power surged to its peak. Today, no one shall escape from my hands. Zhou Chun Immortal raised his hand, summoning a golden light. Buzz! The dazzling golden light was so bright that no one could keep their eyes open. Even Jian Wushuang felt his eyes stinging, but fortunately, his thought power enveloped the surroundings, so he wasn't completely blinded. However, the others weren't as fortunate. They all clutched their eyes in pain, curling up into balls. Only 4 people remained standing. Besides Jian Wushuang and Zhou Chun, there were the guardian Tongshan and Xiangyang. Regarding the powerful infant from the demon sect, it directly revealed its true form. Countless black gases erupted from its body, seemingly on the verge of tearing its entire form apart. This person can actually remain unaffected. The immortal Juchen was astonished deep down, and his gaze also turned towards Xiangyang, because only this person was beyond his expectations. As for Jian Wushuang, there was no need to say more. If he couldn't withstand even this little bit of light, he wouldn't be worth risking everything for. The guardian Tongshan, on the other hand, was protected by a treasure bestowed by Xianxia Tower. Since he followed the righteous path, the treasure matched well with his abilities, so he wouldn't be intimidated. But Xiangyang, just an ordinary golden core stage cultivator, how was he managing this? Bang! Juchen immediately made a move, attempting to stop Xiangyang, who was dragging Jiang Shang away. A beam of golden light pierced through the wooden pavilion, shooting straight towards Xiangyang. Jian Wushuang had already spread his thought power across the area, so how could he stand by and watch the opponent take action? In a flash, he blocked the golden light, and with a single grip of his hand, a force of nothingness emerged. The nothingness burned and transformed into power, directly dispersing the golden light. The entire inn was instantly shattered, and the terrifying destructive force caused several golden core cultivators, who were already severely injured, to fall unconscious. Run! This time, Jian Wushuang didn't use his voice transmission technique. He shouted directly. He finally understood the situation. His opponent probably intended to kill everyone to silence them. There was no consideration for anyone nearby. Yang Xiao would die, the Xianxia guards would also die, and Chen Yuan wouldn't survive either. Sensing the intense explosions, Tong Shan, who was protecting Chen Yuan, hesitated for a moment. Without concern for anyone else, he immediately fled with Chen Yuan. His orders were to kill Yang Xiao and quickly bring Chen Yuan back to Taiyan City. As for the matters in Mongshan County, he was not to intervene or investigate further. Acting on orders was the principle of the Xianxia guards, leaving no room for personal emotions. Even with the sudden appearances of the immortal Juchen and Jian Wushuang, he didn't bother to ask any questions. His only focus was on leaving, because in his view, Yang Zhao's death was inevitable today. The inn was instantly destroyed. Even the imperial guards stationed in the distance were obliterated in an instant. Yet, the golden light and the burning force of nothingness continued to clash. Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth, and his entire thought power surged once again. Gathering in the palm of his right hand, he once more condensed the consciousness of nothingness. Burn! Buzz! The power of void that had ignited grew 10 times stronger, forcing back the golden light that had been blasting out. Not bad, but still far from enough. Faced with the overwhelming golden light that could crush one's spirit, the immortal Zhou Chun conjured a 9-story pagoda in his hand. Absorb! The golden light, which had been reflected back by Jian Wushuang, was completely drawn into the 9-story pagoda. Take a good look, this is the supreme treasure, the 9-prison pagoda. Dying by the hand of a supreme treasure is an honor. The immortal Zhou Chen's white hair fluttered as the 9-story pagoda in his hands spun upwards, preparing to suppress Jian Wushuang. The terrifying gravitational force made it impossible for Jian Wushuang to stand firm. The wooden debris around him was instantly sucked into the pagoda, along with the severely injured cultivators who had no time to escape, all of them being drawn into the 9-prison pagoda. A supreme treasure? Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth and let out a cold laugh, though blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. It was clear that he was struggling to resist and had already been injured. I underestimated him. He felt a slight tremor in his heart, yet he also realized the determination of the Tang Emperor. He had indeed prepared to kill them all. What puzzled Jian Wushuang the most was why a cultivator with such divine abilities would willingly work for the Tang Emperor. There were likely many reasons behind this that he didn't know. But now was not the time to think about it. With his current strength alone, he was no match for the immortal Zhou Chen. He had no choice but to burn his thought power again. Moreover, he had to burn all of his thought power if he hoped to kill his opponent. However, the immortal Zhou Chen was no fool. He wouldn't just stand there and let himself be killed. Jian Wushuang had to find the right opportunity. Crack! The floor shattered, and his figure slowly rose. I'll take the risk. Jian Wushuang made up his mind, and his figure began to move closer to the 9-prison pagoda. To kill his opponent with a single strike using his thought power, he had to get closer. Fortunately, his opponent also wanted to suppress him with the 9-prison pagoda, giving Jian Wushuang the opportunity to approach and deliver a fatal blow. But there was also a downside. If Jian Wushuang's thought power burned out with his current strength without the support of thought power, he would likely be instantly sucked into the 9-prison pagoda. At that point, even if his opponent died, the instant power of the 9-prison pagoda would be enough to shatter Jian Wushuang's body. He had entered this world with nothing more than a mortal body. Even after becoming a cultivator in the Golden Core stage, his body hadn't undergone any significant transformation. Without the protection of power, even a mortal body could be shattered by ordinary weapons, let alone the crushing force of the 9-prison pagoda. But at this moment he had no better choice. Escape? If he fled now, it could be many years before he had another opportunity like this. Besides, escaping was not his style. Even if his body was destroyed, as long as his soul remained, that would be enough. The soul couldn't be altered. His thought power was so strong, even because of his soul. Even if this world had an underworld, it wouldn't be able to control his soul. Even if his soul couldn't return to his original body, he could still find another one in this world. Let's do this. After calculating everything, Jian Wushuang spat blood and clutched his chest, feigning an appearance of being unable to hold on any longer. A sinister grin spread across the immortal Zhou Chen's face. Ha! A powerful figure from the upper realm. You are about to fall. Everything you have will belong to me, including your soul. The fear and inheritance hidden within you will all be mine. 9-prison demon suppression. Buzz. Jian Wushuang and the 9-prison pagoda rushed toward each other. But just as he was about to be suppressed, everything around him seemed to freeze. Wooden debris and shattered wine jars floated in the air. And amidst the chaos, a terrifying eye flickered. Candle Dragon's Eye. Jian Wushuang roared as a red light burst from the center of his forehead. The massive eye instantly transformed into a starry sky. Although he didn't have a supreme treasure on him, the Candle Dragon's Eye, part of the Beast God's arsenal, was the first treasure he had obtained. He was well acquainted with it, and even without the treasure itself, he could still use its secret techniques. Relying on his burning thought power, he awakened the power to control the Candle Dragon's Eye. The beam of light that shot out was enough to obliterate an ordinary god manifestation realm cultivator. The immortal Zhou Chen didn't even have time to react before the light in his eyes dimmed. The 3 puppets below also fell silent. The immortal Zhou Chen's body, without a single wound, fell straight from the sky. At that moment, everything around him resumed its movement. The suppressive force of the 9-prison pagoda surged forth. In just a moment, its power swallowed Jian Wushuang, along with the immortal Zhou Chen's corpse and the 3 puppets, all into the 9-prison pagoda. As the power dissipated, The 9-prison pagoda fell heavily to the ground, its golden light fading, and darkness once again descended. The surrounding area had already been flattened. After a long while, Chen Yuan and the others, who had escaped the danger zone, cautiously returned, only to see a 9-story small tower standing on the ground, about the height of a person. "Where is Senior Wushuang?" Jiang Shang asked in confusion. Xiangyang approached the 9-story pagoda, circling around it with a strange tone. "The aura from this pagoda is stronger than that of a treasure. It should be a supreme treasure. Given Brother Wushuang's current strength, I'm afraid things don't look good for him." "What are you talking about? Aren't you all friends of Senior Wushuang? Why aren't you rescuing him right away?" Chun Yuan stood anxiously on the side. "Rescue?" Xiangyang sighed. "What do you expect me to use for a rescue?" His strength wasn't even on par with Jian Wushuang's. Although his thought power was strong, without the divine arts from burning secret methods, he could at best rival some late-stage golden core cultivators. And what lay before them was a supreme treasure. A treasure that even an immortal like Xianxia could use, and no one in this world could fully activate it. The divine arts that the 9-dust immortal used likely only involved one of the levels within the 9-story pagoda. Moreover, its full power hadn't been unleashed. If all the power of the first level were controlled, it would be enough to destroy this world. But what do we do now? Chun Yuan was worried and helpless. At this moment, the left guardian Tong Shan, who had been protecting him, said, "With such a significant incident, I suggest young Master Chan return to Tian City with me first. I believe His Majesty will send someone to investigate the aftermath, as this situation has already exceeded our limits. Continuing further will likely yield no results." After this battle, Tong Shan was also somewhat terrified. If he hadn't run fast enough just now, he would have been sucked into the 9-prison tower and instantly torn apart. "Leaving already?" A voice suddenly rang out from behind, and everyone couldn't help but turn their heads to look. It was the alluring saintess of the centipede tribe. This time, all the powerful members of the centipede tribe, including the giant centipede controlled by the saintess, had perished, leaving only her alive. But she was also injured at this moment. Tong Shan looked down on her and sneered, "You're just a minor golden core cultivator. Do you think you can stop me?" Although he had suffered significant injuries, dealing with an injured golden core cultivator was still a piece of cake. However, in his mind, if he could avoid fighting, he would. Who knew if there were any hidden tricks left, and if he were to fall here, it would be a huge loss. "I may be just a minor golden core cultivator, but I still have this." The centipede saintess shook a cloth bag in her hand, with the centipede totem marked on it. As she spoke, she squeezed the bag and slowly approached, her tone filled with menace. "You may be able to kill a golden core cultivator now, but can you escape from a nascent soul centipede? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Your life-bound centipede has already self-destructed. The saintess of the centipede tribe can only cultivate one life-bound centipede. The rest can't compare to the life-bound centipede. You must be bluffing." Tong Shan's face changed dramatically as he backed away. "Even if it's not as powerful as a life-bound centipede, as long as it has the strength of a late-stage golden core, we can still keep you here." At this moment, Xianxia also stepped forward. Everyone else had died. Among those remaining, apart from the left guardian Tong Shan, the targets were almost the same, and Chen Yuan wasn't important. So, as long as they killed the left guardian Tong Shan, they could still take Chen Yuan to Mongshan County City. "Xiao, I am the left guardian of the Xianxia Guard. I am taking Chen Yuan back to Tian City. Do you dare defy orders?" Tong Shan no longer had the courage to rely on his strength and could only try to suppress Xiao with his official position. Xiao, however, remained indifferent. He casually took out the Xianxia Guard's token from his waist and threw it directly to Tong Shan, saying nonchalantly, "Then I'll quit right now. As a commoner, I'll kill you, this court lackey. You're rebelling? Aren't you afraid of causing trouble for Wei Jiuxian?" Tong Shan was now utterly panicked. Apart from Chen Yuan, there were two other formidable figures on the scene. If these people joined forces to attack him, he would be doomed. He definitely didn't want to die here. After finally climbing to the rank of a pseudo-infant stage cultivator and becoming a superpower, it had been his lifelong dream. For this dream, he was willing to give up everything. Loyalty, righteousness, and reason, all could be abandoned. The only thing he cherished was his own life. Sensing the situation had turned against him, he immediately began to soften his stance. Xianxia, no matter what, we are still fellow disciples. Do we really need to reach this point? Let's take a step back. I can pretend nothing happened. You sure know how to back down quickly. But it's too late. Xiangyang drew his sword and made his move. The saintess of the Qianzu tribe also untied her bag, and a blood-red centipede flew out. This wasn't a Qianzu centipede. It was a mutated blood centipede far more powerful than the Qianzu centipede, already possessing combat power at the infant stage. Even if Tongshan were at his peak, he wouldn't stand a chance against it. However, with his current injuries and being surrounded by so many people, escape was impossible. Faced with Xiangyang's bizarre swordsmanship, Tongshan made a single mistake, and his legs were instantly severed. Ah! Tongshan fell to the ground, completely losing his combat abilities. He gritted his teeth to endure the pain of his severed legs, his eyes filled with hatred. Xianxia, you have a grudge against him, so I'll leave him to you. Xiangyang sheathed his sword and stepped aside, not delivering the final blow. In his mind, this was an opportunity to strengthen his relationship with Xianxia. Before Jian Wushuang went into battle, he had sent a message to Xiangyang. If the 9 prison tower became ownerless, Xiangyang should take the tower and leave, waiting for Jian Wushuang to emerge from it before making further plans. He was also instructed to take the black puppet among the 3 puppets. Moreover, he was told to win over Xianxia. This man knew some things about the Jiang kingdom, so he must be brought along. He couldn't be allowed to leave, nor could he be offended. Forget it. Xianxia closed his eyes slightly and shook his head. He's already crippled. There's no need for more killing. He still couldn't bring himself to deliver the killing blow, feeling that Tongshan was just doing his duty. Besides, he hadn't actually attacked him yet, though he had the intention. Actions should be judged, not intentions. Xiangyang secretly shook his head. Naive. Trying to reform a Dao Seeker? Unless you turn into an elixir for him to consume. He had lived through hundreds of eras and understood human nature far better than these mortals. Those who pursued strength, also known as Dao Seekers, often resorted to any means necessary. Although they could distinguish right from wrong, they would abandon all principles to become stronger. This was the ruthlessness of Dao Seekers. Calling them demons wasn't inaccurate, but they wouldn't look twice at useless mortals and wouldn't bully the weak without reason. However, if the weak held treasures they needed, they would kill them without hesitation to seize those treasures. Dao seeking was simple, only for the sake of becoming stronger. Although Xiangyang secretly disdained Yang Zhao's attitude, he didn't argue with him, hoping to win him over. Leaving behind the crippled guardian Tongshan, Xiangyang carried the 9 prison tower on his back and led the group away from the place. 1 hour later, in the distant sky, a blood cloud approached, thick with dense blood mist. Immortal Master. The 9 prison pagoda is gone. The blood cloud paused briefly before returning the way it came. As for Tongshan, the guardian on the ground, he didn't even glance back. In Taiyan City, within the Palace of Mental Cultivation, Emperor Li Miao sat cross-legged on a prayer mat. Opposite him was a faint, ethereal figure. If one looked closely, they could discern the figure's outline and facial features. If Jian Wushuang were present, he would have immediately recognized the figure as the very 9-dust immortal he had previously killed with his thought power. Yet now it had transformed into a wisp of a soul, sustained by thought power to maintain its consciousness. The 9 prison pagoda is gone. The ethereal figure trembled and stammered. You're saying the 9 prison pagoda disappeared from its place? Emperor Tang nodded and reassured him. Immortal Master, there's no need to worry. I've already sent people to chase after it. Moreover, the 9 prison pagoda is so unique that those people surely won't be able to activate it. Humph! What do you know? The ethereal nine dust suppressed his anger and shouted, "Do you think they're just ordinary cultivators? If they were ordinary cultivators, my physical body wouldn't have been destroyed. The power I've accumulated for 1,000 years scattered in an instant is a minor issue. But if they manage to control the nine-prison pagoda, they will undoubtedly discover the secret hidden within the northern region glacier. Do you understand?" Emperor Tang showed no anger at being reprimanded, and his expression didn't change. He calmly replied, "Then we can only initiate the final plan ahead of schedule. Everything has been arranged, just waiting for a mortal master to personally direct it. There's no other way." Nine Dust closed his eyes slightly, though unwillingly. Those so-called plans in his heart paled in comparison to the importance of the nine-prison pagoda. As long as the nine-prison pagoda was in his possession, even if he ascended to the higher realms, he could still dominate across the world. Taiyan City, South Tower. At that moment, Wei Jiuxian was draped in a coarse black robe, standing on the tower and gazing at the darkened Taiyan City, his mind swirling with countless thoughts. After a moment, a mist descended, forming into a black-clad figure who knelt on one knee and respectfully reported, "Commander, Xianxia and his people have completely disappeared, along with the mysterious cultivator who had been hiding in the shadows." Continue searching." Wei Jiuxian didn't even turn his head. His tone remained calm. This development was expected, yet it also surprised him. The original plan was for Chun Yuan to be brought back. But then, an unexpected variable appeared. The mysterious Immortal by His Majesty's side. This simple situation had suddenly become complicated. The mysterious cultivators of the Jiang Kingdom, the ancient mysterious cultivators, all were unpredictable factors. There aren't many people who could force him to silence, but he ended up being silenced himself. How amusing. But it works out well. It saves me the trouble of slowly leading you to madness. Wei Jiuxian clasped his hands behind his back and turned to shout towards the stairs. "Someone, deliver a message to the Desire King for me." Nine-prison pagoda. Though it was only human-sized at the moment, the internal world, just the first level alone, far surpassed this mundane world. Such was the power of a supreme treasure. In the past, an item like this would have been mere trash to Jian Wushuang. A simple supreme treasure would drive an ordinary Yen Immortal mad, but a slightly wealthier great Yen Immortal wouldn't care for it. Yet, this treasure shouldn't have appeared in such a mundane world. To Jian Wushuang, Yen Immortals and great Yen Immortals were merely transcendents who had escaped the lower-level universes. In the vastness of space, even in the original universe, great Yen Immortals were not considered powerful. But comparing that level of the universe to the present was like comparing the distance between here and the starry sky. It was indeed odd that such a supreme treasure, which could only be nurtured in the original universe, was hidden in a small mundane world. It was akin to a cultivator at the divine aspect realm facing a great Yen Immortal. In the vast first level, the surroundings were as bright as day, with abundant light, yet nothing could be seen. This was the law of light. What appeared to be a field of light was actually the greatest darkness. There was no difference between pitch blackness and blinding light. In the white world, the first breath was exhaled, and a phantom figure floated in the air, aimless, as if lost. Is this inside the nine-prison pagoda? The consciousness suddenly opened its eyes, thought power controlling the soul, causing the figure to hover in mid-air. It was Jian Wushuang. At this moment, his soul aura had undergone a vast transformation compared to when he was in the outside world. If any living beings from the outside saw him, they would be too shocked to speak. Because a black mist swirled around him, constantly devouring and collapsing, and every bright point of light around him represented a star. My soul power has actually increased here? Jian Wushuang was equally astonished. He hadn't expected that after entering the nine-prison pagoda, his soul power would recover significantly. Before entering this world, he had only been an avatar, with strength equivalent to a quasi-7-star level. But now, his soul power had already reached the level of a Tao Lord. If he wanted to break open this supreme treasure, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Once he left the treasure, if he could maintain this level of soul power, He could ascend directly in broad daylight, heading to a greater world. He could even condense a powerful physical body, comparable to a Tao Lord's combat power. However, there was one thing that worried him. What if his soul power decreased after leaving the nine-prison pagoda? If his soul power were reduced again, returning to the level of divine aspect realm thought power, it wouldn't be able to last long. Moreover, in that small world outside, it would be extremely difficult to condense a matching physical body. Otherwise, no one would have reached the level of ascension for so many years. After some hesitation, Jian Wushuang decided to search the place first. He still remembered that when he was swallowed in, 3 puppets had come along with him. He wasn't interested in the other 2 puppets, but the one refined from space crystals could be of great help to him. Perhaps he could use that puppet to separate a portion of his soul power from this place. The rest of his soul power could then explore this supreme treasure and possibly take control of it, using it to restore his soul power. He knew the 9-prison pagoda had 9 levels. Even the 9-dust immortal could only control the first level, and they hadn't fully understood it. The subsequent levels might hold even more surprises. With his current Tao Lord level soul power, he could quickly comprehend the first level. Having made up his mind, Jian Wushuang spread out his thought power, beginning to search for the puppet. But as his thought power expanded, his eyes filled with disbelief. Even with my powerful thought power, I can't fully explore the first level. This supreme treasure is extraordinary, at least a peak-level supreme treasure. Jian Wushuang's heart stirred, and his soul split apart. His realm was high. As long as the power was there, all the secret techniques within his consciousness could be used. At this moment, he performed a splitting technique of the devouring Tao. His body instantly split into countless avatars, each with the strength of a 9-revolution great Yen Immortal. Thousands of clones dispersed, each flying in different directions. The speed of the clones was incredible, covering tens of thousands of miles with every breath. Meanwhile, his thought power could cover a distance of approximately 100 million miles. The various clones flew for an entire day, and their connected thought power spanned an area comparable to a great world. Yet they still hadn't reached the boundary. Fortunately, I found that puppet. Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. Thousands of clones continued to spread out in search of the boundary, while the clone that retrieved the puppet remained in place, preparing to divide the soul force. At this moment, that puppet had already been reduced to fragments. Though 9-prison pagoda was in the hands of the immortal Zhou Chun, and only a minor secret technique from the first level was employed, it was still enough to easily destroy a puppet crafted from spatial crystals. Fortunately, the spatial crystals had turned into powdery fluid, which could still be reformed into a humanoid shape, and the spatial power within remained intact. This was sufficient for Jian Wushuang's needs. Moreover, he even considered refining the spatial crystals anew, using the methods of the immortal Zhou Chun to craft a body that embodied the laws of space. The puppet crafted by the immortal Zhou Chun only utilized the hardness of the spatial crystals, failing to tap into their full potential. However, for a practitioner at the divine aspect realm, this was already pushing the limits. But for Jian Wushuang, this was far from enough. In his eyes, the hardness of spatial crystals wasn't their most significant strength. The space of a world was, in fact, not the most stable, often less so than time. When Jian Wushuang had first become a universe master, he could tear through the void within an endless world. Later, when he reached the realm god continent, he, as a universe god, was able to tear through space-time, even shattering it. The seemingly formidable space of the realm god continent was like thin paper in the eyes of the powerful. However, the upper limit of strength nurtured by the realm god continent was that of a 9th tribulation universe god or even a god of time and space. Yet, its spatial laws could only support universe masters below the level of universe gods. A slightly stronger universe god could tear through space, but some universe gods couldn't alter the flow of time. Only the most powerful universe gods could achieve this. Thus, space within a world was relatively easy to break through. This is why most lower realm experts ascended by shattering the void. For ordinary mortals who couldn't ascend, breaking the void was already a great feat, but for a super powerful being like Jian Wushuang, it was child's play. Shattering the void was purely a matter of strength. To obtain even greater power, one had to rely on laws and the blessings of the world's Tao. It was like how the emperor had refined a great world and became its controller, using the power of that world to rise as a supreme expert among emperors. Beyond that, one could control an entire universe, or create a universe and become a universe master. While this seemed to transcend the laws, it was still dependent on the power of laws. The same applied to universe gods, who internalized the laws of the universe and could even resist the suppression of supreme rules. But where did the power they wield come from? Time? Starry sky? This question was beyond what Jian Wushuang could fully comprehend at the moment, but based on his knowledge and deductions, he could infer that this power likely originated from the being who first created the starry sky. The power of the 12 star spirits was just a part of the starry sky. The starry sky couldn't bear such immense power, so it dispersed it among the cultivators. That was why so many powerful beings, governed by the highest rules, emerged, but in essence, they couldn't escape the laws of the starry sky. And the laws of the starry sky were created by that starry sky creator, or rather, the realm beast. Swish! While guiding the space crystal, Jian Wushuang pondered over the path ahead. Restoring his strength was just a minor detour, perhaps costing him tens of thousands of years at most. The road ahead was still the divine tribulation. That was what mattered most to him. After crossing the divine tribulation, whether he became a universe god or a time and space god, he would be invincible on the realm god continent. Whether to head to the starry sky or remain here would be a decision he could make on a whim. He could stay to search for the whereabouts of the prophet, who had once forged a beast god's weapon for him and then disappeared, as if they had never existed on the realm god continent. The prophet's mystery reminded him of his teacher, Xianxia, and this world he currently resided in. He had once dreamed of the prophet's silhouette. That dream of the prophet's silhouette had occurred without any warning. He had been groping for clues, hoping to see the prophet again. But he had never succeeded. He still needed to explore step by step. Prophet? Teacher Xianxia? Jian Wushuang gently shook his head. What exactly are you plotting? Back then, you guided me from a small world, gave me treasures and secret techniques, helped me step by step to leave the small world, to reach the primordial universe of the great Yen domain, encounter the Qixin temple, venture into the 9 great time spaces, and eventually arrive at the realm god continent. What is your plan behind all of this? Even today, he still couldn't fully comprehend it. In fact, he had almost given up back then, but then he encountered that sword immortal Ding Bai who drew him into the great Yen domain, and afterward it was one step at a time of guidance. Just like today, it was still a form of guidance. I already possess the combat strength of a 9th star universe god. Can I still not meet teacher Xianxia? Can I still not help him? Jian Wushuang slowly closed his eyes. Although he didn't know how far away the so-called future was, he knew that time was already close. Sitting cross-legged, a strand of his soul power merged with the space crystal. The first attempt failed, because his soul was too powerful, and those space crystals were merely the space crystals of this small world, their capacity too weak. They could, at most, bear a soul power 1 level above the divine appearance realm. As for what that soul power level 1 level above the divine appearance realm was, he wasn't entirely sure. If he calculated it according to the cultivation system of the small world and the unified cultivation system of the outside world, it should still be the Tao Foundation realm. In the unified cultivation system of the outside world, the stages were postnatal, innate, Tao Foundation, primordial spirit, great completion, immortal, and emperor. Postnatal encompassed all postnatal creatures, while innate was for special life forms, though special life forms could also be transformed. For instance, Jian Wushuang was a postnatal special life form. However, in the context of the highest laws, he wasn't considered a special life form, as his perspective was relatively narrow back then. The difference between postnatal and innate was significant, but the realms were the same. The first step on the cultivation path was still the Tao Foundation, which included many things. Take the current small world as an example. All cultivation realms within it belonged to the Tao Foundation. They all cultivated the basics. Above the Tao Foundation was the myriad phenomena stage, which included even more. Among them, there were tens of thousands of laws, and the differences between those at the same realm could be vast. A faint memory of his weaker days flashed through Jian Wushuang's mind as his soul power split again. After continuous divisions, he finally retained a trace of soul power that entered the space crystal. Whoosh! The space crystal, which had already turned to dust, transformed from black to transparent, circling Jian Wushuang like a stream.